everyone. So my apologies for the being bit late, but I'd like to, at this point in time, acknowledge my Vice Chair Ivy Marcos, who you're still Vice Chair, ma'am. Don't worry. We only added an additional Vice Chair for the committee, which is Senator Lauren Legarda. So we have two Vice Chairs for the Committee on Economic Affairs. This is my first hearing of the committee, and we'd like to, of course, make special mention that we are honored to be joined by Secretary Balisacan and many other, of course, ating mga kawani ng gobyerno, many other officers from the different departments. Since we called the meeting to order, we have a quorum with Senator Amy, our Vice Chair, with us today. We'd like to ask the COMSEC, of course, to recognize everyone that are here this morning. So, Madam, Jamie.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For the National Economic and Development Authority, we have Secretary Arsenio Balisacan, together with Undersecretaries Rosemaria De Leon, Attorney Melbourne Pana, Maria Monica Pagunsan, Joseph Capuno, Attorney Crystal Lynn Uy, Assistant Secretary Roderick M. Planta, OIC Director Desiree Joy Narvaez, Director Reverie Pure Sapayan, Director Kathleen Mangure, together with the technical staff, attorneys Jomil Baloro, John Mark Coles, Leody Barcelon, Rita Angela Rivera, Irene Angela Basco, Reynaldo de los Santos, Celso Crisostomo, Cristina Mortega, and Jean Rose Manlangit. For the Department of Finance, we have here Assistant Secretary Neil Adrian Cabiles, together with Director Jolly La Rosa, Althea Marie Fiel Rojas, Fernando Jose Daisico, Julie Bato, Camille Ilyao, and Adrian Castro. For the Department of Budget and Management, we have Undersecretary Joselito Basilio, Attorney Tricia Baraan, and Susan Buffet, if I mentioned it right. And for the Department of Trade and Industry, we have Director Sandra Marie Recolosado and Assistant Division Chief Patricia Estrella, together with Dino Recto, Patricia Austria, and Bonifacio Antolin. For the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas, we have Director Lara Romina Ganapin, together with Mr. Roberto Quintos, Alexis Cervantes, Rachel Lynn Bellandres, Joshua Fama, and Attorney Tricia Beverly Henesa. That's all, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much to our COMSEC. I'd just like to give an opening statement, quick opening statement. Good morning once again, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. As the new chairperson of the Committee on Economic Affairs, I've called this hearing to get a briefing of the state of the nation's economy straight from the country's economic team. Just last week, the Philippine Statistics Authority released the results of its Family Income and Expenditure Survey, where they found that poverty incidences among Filipino families dropped from 13.2% in 2021 to 10.9% in 2023. Dahil daw sa pagtaas ng poverty threshold ng 15.3% at pagtaas din ng mean per capita income ng mga pamilyang Pilipino by 17.9%. And before I continue, I'd just like to recognize our distinguished chairman of the Committee on Ways and Means, no other than Senator, and the hardworking Senator Sherwin Gatchalian. Senator, good morning. As I mentioned earlier, the numbers are good. Pero ang tanong, ramdam ba ito ng ating mga kababayan? At matutuloy ba natin ang pagbaba ng insidente ng kahirapan ngayong taon? In an SWS survey conducted June and July this year, they found that an alarming 58% of Filipino families consider themselves to be poor. This is what they call self-rated poverty. The highest cases among Filipino families since the height of the recession in 2008. If more than half of Filipino families feel poor, then what else can we do, or what else can we be but a poor country? Economic growth must always reach our people and the very people on whose labor our industries rest. With today's briefing, we hope to be given a full economic context against which we must map out the legislative priorities of this committee. We want to know exactly, or we want to know how to take the country's GDP performance, the influx of foreign direct investments, the increase in public-private partnerships, and all these other markers of economic development, and translate these into truly inclusive growth, more jobs, better wages, and reasonable goods and services for every Filipino family. We also seek the economic team's insights on the bills institutionalizing Neda, or National Economic Development Authority, as its own department. Matagal na pangarap ni Sec. Arcian. And of course, the secretaries prior to you. The NEDA has been in charge of our country's economic planning and development coordination. And on top of this, we hope to glean from the briefing vital information, preparing us for the upcoming deliberations of the 2025 national budget. With that, I once again thank you all for your presence, including our senators that are here today. We now proceed with the briefing. But before we proceed with the briefing, I'd like to recognize first our Vice Chair, Senator Amy Marcos, for her opening remarks.
Yes, thank you very much to our Senate President and now Chairman of the Economic Affairs Committee, my old committee. And I am today, together with Senator Gatchalian, an author of the bill filed in October of last year. This was a refiling from the previous Congress and already extensively discussed under Secretary Pernia, who was very keen to convert the authority into a full-blown department. As my colleagues know, Senator Gatchalian as well as Senator Subiri, I am firmly against the creation of ever more departments in the spirit of right-sizing. However, it is also clear that Article 12 of Section 9 of the Constitution indicates that Congress will establish an independent economic and planning agency headed by the President. That being the case, and the head of the NEDA already holding cabinet status, I have pushed for this bill, although it was temporarily held up during the COVID pandemic, and Secretary Carl Chua. We would like to revive it today, and I am hopeful that we can still hold true to the previous agreement that the four major groups in NEDA, which are the policy planning and investment, programming, regional development, as well as corporate affairs groups, apat ito, will also become the four undersecretaries without any significant increase in budget. Under them will be the ASECs as well as the attached agencies that we're already familiar with, and the regional offices of NEDA that are already in existence in any case. So the attached agencies are the PIDS, PPC, which is already there, the public-private partnership, no additional budget will be required, Philippine Statistical Research, and the Volunteer Service, as well as the Tariff Commission. All of these agencies are in operation and should not require significant increases either in budget. So I hope Attorney Baraan is cognizant of all that. Thank you very much, and that is all we have to say, aside from the fact that, of course, I come from an era when the NEDA was all-powerful and omnipresent. It is a much debased role today. I hope that we can bring it up to the independent and dominant presence and voice in economic planning that it had before. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Vice Chair. We'd like to recognize our distinguished colleague, Senator Sherwin Gatchalian, for his opening remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I join you in the call to review our policies on addressing poverty in our country. I had the same question when I read the SWS self-rated poverty numbers that was released a few months ago. And despite being one of the fastest growing economies in the entire world, growing at around 6% clip almost every year, seems to me that the trickle-down effect is not being felt by majority of our constituents. Close to about 40% of our constituents still rate themselves as poor. So it's good to discuss what are the mechanisms in order for our constituents to feel the economic growth of our country and to make sure that economic growth is inclusive, meaning enjoys everyone enjoys the prosperity that the economic growth is bringing to our country. So thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, for calling for this hearing.
Very much, my distinguished colleague. So we now give the floor, of course, to the most senior member that is here, on highest in rank, no other than our distinguished secretary. Just a reminder, this is a very important hearing. We thank the undersecretaries of the different departments. I know your secretaries are quite busy. I know Tuesday the President calls for meetings in Malacanang, and I thank the good secretary for being here. But I take note of the DTI. The DTI, with due respect, ma'am, what is your rank in the DTI, ma'am? And your name, please state your name and rank.
Good morning po, Mr. Chair, and the rest of the participants here. I'm Sandra Marie Recolizado, Director from the Board of Investments.
So you're with the board of, are
Yes,
you
po.
head of the Board of Investments? Are you the head of BOI, ma'am?
No, Director from the Board of Investments.
Okay, sino pong head ninyo sa
Our
BOI?
chairman is the DTI Secretary. Our managing head is Undersecretary Severino Rodolfo.
Rodolfo. Yes.
Si Yusek Perry po.
Yusek Perry.
Yes,
I
po.
know Yusek Perry very well. Hindi sila makarating this morning. What was the reason why hindi sila makarating? Because we would like to discuss also the issue on, of course, investments, foreign direct investments. Ilan ang pinangako, ilan na bang dumating, ilan bang napako na hindi pa dumarating. I hope later on you'll be able to answer that. So please let the secretary know that these briefings are quite important. It's going to be far, and it's not going to be as productive as Senator Gatchalian's Pogo hearings, no, that we'll have it every week. But kami po, once in a while na po tayo magpapatawag na economic briefing. We'd like to have Secretary Pascual, or at least the Undersecretary, si Yusek Perry man lang attend so that he can brief us.
Yusek Perry is attending a dialogue with the U.S. Defense Department.
The Defense Department.
Yes.
Aba, he's wearing the defense hat now. Maybe because of foreign investments on the defense side. But anyway, we can discuss that a bit later. Just a reminder. Yeah, okay. So let us now recognize once again our distinguished Secretary R.C. Balisacan, to give us an overview of the economic outlook of the Philippines.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Honorable Senator Mig Saviri, Senator Amy Marcos, and Senator Win Gatchalian, fellow workers in government. Good morning to all. Could we Okay, let me start with some context, Mr. Chair. First is to note that this administration's Philippine Development Plan is a plan for deep economic and social transformation, and that's the plan that we are implementing since day one.
Sec, favor, could you put the microphone closer and then speak a bit louder lang? I know you have a bedroom voice, but in today's briefing, lakasan mo lang.
All right,
Parang
right.
nagagalit ka na sa asawa mo. Ganyan, oh.
Okay. All right. So I was saying that the programs of this administration is based on the Philippine Development Plan, PDP 2023 to 2028, and it's a plan for deep economic and social transformation. This is also the second medium-term plan to be anchored on the national long-term vision or ambition natin 2040. The overall goal of this plan is to reinvigorate job creation and accelerate poverty reduction by steering the economy back on the high growth path, and more importantly, begin the economic transformation for a prosperous, inclusive, and resilient society. In the next slide, Mr. Chair, is the framework of this plan, and this was launched in January 2023. It aims to create more high-quality jobs, sustainably reduce poverty, and transform the Philippines into a prosperous, inclusive, and resilient society. The overall strategy framework identifies the development and sectoral issues, proposes strategies, programs, policies, and legislative measures to achieve the plan's targets. The red section of the framework focuses on enhancing the capabilities of individuals and families to enjoy a prosperous life through human capital development, social services, food security, and social protection. The green section of that framework is on transforming the production sectors to generate more quality jobs and competitive products. This will be done through modernization, inter-industry linkages, R&D, technology, innovation, trade and investments, and by promoting competition. The blue section, the lower part of that of the framework, focuses on creating the enabling environment through good governance, macroeconomic stability, good infrastructure, and disaster resilience. This is the economic transformation for a prosperous, inclusive, and resilient Philippines that will get us back on track to achieving the ambition natin 2040. The next slide, as the Chair elaborates the transformation agenda of the PDP. It has thus the following components there: the acceleration of digital transformation, enhancement of connectivity, intensification of the partnership with the private sector, promotion of servicification, that is where production processes can be made more efficient and outputs can have higher value added by utilizing more outputs from the services sector, such as creative design and e-commerce. Establishment of the dynamic innovation ecosystem, and last, the enhancement of the role of LGUs as partners in development. With that, let me provide a stock take on where we are now, Mr. Chair. And we are pleased to note that we met as of today, and to be more precise, as of the last data that we have, and most of this data were available for 2023, and some are available for 2024. We met many of the targets, though we lag behind in some indicators. We cited here some of the key indicators that we have been monitoring under this plan. First, the GDP, or the gross domestic product. We grew by 5.5% in 2023, although lower than the 6 to 7% target for the year. The country was one of the, as we all know, best performing economies in Asia. But moreover, per capita gross national income, which is a metric that is followed by World Bank and other international organizations for inter-country comparison, increased to $4,230 in 2023 from $3,950 in 2022. I'll come back to that, Mr. Chair, and the implication for the upper middle income country threshold. The fiscal deficit ratio, or the deficit to GDP ratio, significantly declined in 2023 from its 2022 level, albeit we missed a bit by 0.1 percentage point the target for the year. The debt to stock, the national government debt stock to GDP ratio slightly declined to 60.1% in 2023 from 60.9% in 2022. And we are on target for that year. As expected, the country was not immune to the inflationary effects caused by external developments, particularly the Russia-Ukraine war and various supply disruptions. The food inflation, food and headline inflation from January to December 2023 increased to 8% and 6% respectively. That is higher than what we targeted for that year, which was in the range of 2.5 to 4.5%. Nevertheless, the data show food inflation declining to 6.5% and headline inflation to 3.7%. With respect to other indicators, particularly on the labor front, we note that the labor market's quite robust. The unemployment rate in 2023 is at 4.6%, much better than the 2023 target of 5.3 to 6.4%. Underemployment was also has also seen a significant improvement, also reaching our targets. You noted, Mr. Chair, and I note also here that the country has made remarkable strides in reducing poverty levels between 2021 and 2023. Those are the two comparable data sets we have. For fiscal year 2023, the official poverty statistics showed that the poverty incidence among population significantly declined to 15.5% from 18.1% in 2021, surpassing our target of 16 to 16.4% for 2023. This translates a decrease of 2.5 million Filipinos living in poverty. I can comment on that seeming disparity between this number and what you indicated earlier, Mr. Chair, and the hunger data. And with respect to the indicator on innovation, we are pleased to note that we also have seen improvement, placing us to 56th in the Global Innovation Index of the 132 countries in 2023 from 59 in 2022. Yes, that we have not.
Yeah.
I
You
think
have
that we
it's
seen
not yet
also
available, it says there.
Yeah, we have also seen improvement in the Global Competitiveness Index, Mr. Chair. I will elaborate on this later on as I discuss the way forward. Let me just note now that we continue to operationalize this transformation agenda set forth in the PDP 2023 to 2028. Can you have the next slide, please? All right. And we indicated here some of the ongoing initiatives, programs, and plans associated with each of these items with respect to accelerating digital transformation. The key program that we are pushing there is this the completion of this PhilSys and the rollout of the digital ID, modernization of the agricultural sector, and the digitalization of the entire public sector. With respect to improving connectivity, the big push we're making there is the Build Better More program, continuing the robust growth of public infrastructure through GAA, ODA, and PPP modalities, and with the passage and issuance of the IRR of the Public Services Act, we hope to ramp up the implementation of that toward improving connectivity. I noted earlier the public-private partnership. We have seen a significant interest in this mode of financing infrastructure after the issuance or the Congress enacted the amendment to the BOT law and the issuance of the IRR. And next slide, please. With respect to the promotion of the servicification, we note that we have been working on industry clusters, particularly development of roadmaps toward promoting and enhancing the development of key sectors. And the DTI is here to elaborate later on their roadmaps, for example, for knowledge, innovation, science, and technology, parks in state universities and colleges, as well as other clusters, including the industrial, manufacturing, and transport cluster, technology, media, and telecommunications clusters, and modern basic needs and resilience economy cluster. All right, we have also already rolled out and we are ramping up the implementation of this of the National Innovation Agenda and Strategy document for 2023 to 2032 to support the establishment of a dynamic innovation ecosystem. And with respect to the enhancement of the role of LGUs as partners in development, we note that we are about to release the amendment to the to the EO that EO 138 that expanded the size of the economic pie, the share of government of the revenues, government revenues to LGUs to 40%.
What is EO 138 for the information of our colleagues and myself?
This is the implementing guidelines for the Mandanas Garcia ruling. Because now that there are many issues that have arisen out of that, including the capacity of LGUs to be able to absorb the much greater amount of resources, and what to do with those who cannot still have inadequate resources. So that's the one that the amended rules will address. Mr. Chair, DBM is the chair of that. They can elaborate on that later. Okay. So let me now move to and note finally that what I've just described and particularly the outcomes of our programs last year are detailed in the Philippine Development Report 2023. This is a report that we annually produce to ensure that we are producing the metrics that are required for us to monitor the implementation of the program and to learn lessons from the experiences so that we can sharpen the tools that we have as we move forward with the implementation. And then Let me now provide more details on this economic performance, Mr. Chair. And let me start with this graph, noting that the Philippine economy expanded by 5.7% in the first quarter of 2024, coming from a high base of 6.4% in first quarter of 2023 and picking up from 5.5% in 2023. Again, we note that among the major economies in the region, the Philippines posted one of the fastest growth during this period. Of course, the fastest growing economies in the Asian region these days is India, growing at 7.8%, and India is 7.8%. 7.8%. Yeah. Yeah. Vietnam is 5.7%. China is 5.3%. Indonesia 5.1%. Malaysia 3.9%. And Thailand 1.3%. I'll come to the prospects for the country again in relation to these countries later. Okay. Real GDP per capita picked up to 4.8% in the first quarter of 2024 from 4.6% in the fourth quarter of 23. This now places us to over 10% higher than our pre-pandemic levels. So it took us more than 3 years, 2021, 22, 23, to exceed by 10% the levels that we had pre-pandemic. That's how we practically lost 3 years of economic growth because of the pandemic. So on the demand side,
Before you go on, Secretary, just quickly, because these numbers, it might escape me. In 2022, the GDP growth rate was 7.6%. How do you explain the big jump as compared to 5.5 that we have now?
well, in 2022, that was still the early stages of the opening up of the economy. Remember, 2020, we were practically shut down. 2021, partially opened. And 2022, that's when we sped up the opening of the economy. That's essentially it. And then, of course, it slowed down in 2023. That's already some base effects. But that's also the time when you have all this global and global supply chain disruptions, and including our own disruption in our domestic supplies. All right. In the next slide, we see here the sectors of our economy, and what we want to note here is that on the demand side of the economy, the biggest contributor is really just the household expenditure, almost over 70% in 2022 and 2023 of that GDP is coming from the household expenditure.
So
And-
to basically explain, yan ang consumption spending ng tao.
Right.
And we would like to say that it's also fueled by OFW remittances.
Yes, of course, yes, the remittances.
So
And I will come
60%
back-
po yan.
Yes, and 60% in 2024 because we saw a recovery of the exports, net exports. And I would like to comment on this. I would like to comment on this composition of. Yes, that's what I would want to point out later on, Mr. Chair, and how we could diversify the economy so that we can be more resilient. We are quite actually concerned about some pillars being too weak. All right. Okay, if you look at the production sectors of the economy, that's on the lower half of this table, we find that the services sector is the biggest contributor of the economy expected. That's where your BPOs are, your hotels, your trade, your education as well. So that's about three-fourths of the economy is from the services sector. Industry contributes about one-fourth, and agriculture, unfortunately, because of slow growth, is just now is contributing less than 1% of the growth, of GDP growth. Okay, please note that these are contribution to growth. What we're saying is that because the large share of services in the economy, and it's relatively faster growth compared to agriculture, that share of growth of services in growth is quite high. It's 3-4%.
May tanong lang ako, Sec, tama-tama, nandito si Senator Gatchalian, and of course the people are watching. When the President declared a total ban on Pogos over the State of the Nation address, it was the most applauded. Yan ang pinakamalakas na sigaw ng taong bayan. Pati sa mga tahanan siguro nagpapalakpakan yung mga tao. Natuwa talaga sila. Siyempre may mga pabor sa Pogo nagsasabi, naku, malaking kawalan sa gobyerno, no? Income ng gobyerno. Officially, you're here now in a committee hearing. Please state the facts. Will this actually be harmful to our economy, or is it negligible, Secretary?
The contribution of Pogo in the economy as of the 2022, that's the latest number we have, is less than 1/2%. That's how small it is. Less than 1/2%. If you compare that with the potential gains that we get from, say, if you have an environment, a social environment that's not associated with crimes, with all this reputational risk, we could actually, that the gains of the economy could be much higher. For example, if China would completely ban the Chinese tourists to the Philippines because of that link with the Pogo, we could easily lose 0.5 to 0.8% of GDP, which is much higher than what you are gaining from Pogo. And that estimate doesn't even include yet the loss in investments, as may happen with that country having that kind of reputation of criminality, and so I said that it's not worth it.
I completely thank the NEDA and the Department of Finance for having that position. As a matter of fact, we credit Senator Gatchalian and Senator Risa Ontiveros, together with the members of the Senate, for putting front and center this issue on criminality caused by these online gaming individuals or companies and syndicates. I just recently, and I mentioned this yesterday in my interpellation of Senator Coco Pimentel, the Minority Floor Leader, doon sa kontrasona niya. Ang sabi ko nga galing po ako ng Singapore, and I met a high-level officer, Vice President for Asia on the WIN Group. Hindi po WIN Gatchalian, pero WIN, WYNN. And they also want to put up resorts here in the Philippines. But he mentioned to me, straight to my face, na takot sila because nga, if you are Chinese looking, not necessarily Chinese, you're Singaporean, or you're from another Indochina region like Cambodia and Laos, they go to the Philippines, the threat of kidnapping is high. Yan ang sabi niya sa akin. Kaya walang gusto pumunta dito dahil pag chinito ka, pagbaba mo ng airport daw, makikidnap ka na. That's their perception of what's happening in the Philippines. And I had to really contradict him that it's a very safe country. Our index crimes have been going down. Pero sabi niya, yes sir, that's for other foreign tourists. Pero ang balita sa amin, pag Chinese-looking tourist ka, the threat is significantly higher. So, tama po kayo. Tama po si Presidente na may tigil na po ito. Kasi kung hindi, we will also lose a large tourism market from China that just want to come here to enjoy our beaches. Sinabi ko kagabi, mga beaches natin, mga resorts natin, mga hospitality ng ating mga kababayan. And so we will lose millions of potential tourists if they stop coming to the Philippines. As a matter of fact, that was my message when I first met the ambassador of China. I told him, yes, you're right. Baka matigil na pumunta dito yung mga Chinese nationals, Taiwanese, kasi nga baka makidnap sila dahil sa sindikato. But of course, he denied, I said. He denied, he told me that. So we had a tit for tat. But now I'm proven wrong. I mean, I was proven right. They were proven wrong. I was proven right. It's going to be a big headache for the country if we continue this. As you notice, ang dami ng sindikato. They've already graduated from just gaming to now scamming individuals with all their technology. We already passed the SIM card registration. They were able to find a way to circumvent the SIM card registration and continue the nefarious activities. So we thank NEDA for officially stating the record that it is only 0.5%. Ilan ulit? 0.5% less than 1/2
Of 1%.
1%
Of GDP. Yes.
GDP.
Yes, 0.23 to be exact.
Kasama na rin yan yung mga rental spaces.
Yes.
Alam mo, may mga
Yes. It's the overall.
industry players nagko-complain, mawawala na doon sila ng mataas na income dahil sa rental spaces. But, you know, that will be a boom for the Filipinos. Because for the longest time, my staff could not afford anymore to rent here in the Pasay City area. Because puno na ng Pogo, they're paying double, triple the price. So we are kicking out our local Filipinos from being able to rent. Now, it will be more affordable. Tama po yun, Secretary, di ba?
Yes.
That's a welcome news for everyone. So, please continue, Sec.
Just to add, Mr. Chairman, I think it's the reputational damage also that Pogo's created is very, very hard to compute, no? And very hard to put in numbers. But just go by flipping through YouTube, you'll see all the international news agencies, South China Morning Post, Reuters, Associated Press. Every time there's a raid, every time there's news about human trafficking, and most especially torture, all of these international news agencies would report that it's happening in our shores here in the Philippines. And I also experienced the same with our chairperson, that whenever we try to court investors to come in, the first instinct or the first thing that comes to their mind is all of these international news agencies report, no? Especially on criminality. So I also thank NEDA for even early on, I think 2 years ago, making a strong stand against Pogos, because while we exact accountability to our economic managers to grow our country, but on the other hand, investors who are willing to come here but are scared because of the reputational issue and also what they read in the news is the one hindering a lot of these investors coming into our country. So and also going by with the rent, the chairman mentioned about office space and rentals. In fact, I was reading the analysis of various real estate companies. Because of the news, a lot of the real estate prices are already starting to go down, making it affordable to locals, no? Because a lot of our local companies are being pushed out from Makati, from Manila area, all the way to the fringes because of the exorbitant rental rates. Now it's reaching the real equilibrium, because before it was inflated. And now locals can afford to rent spaces, expand their businesses at a very affordable price. And overall, it's good for the local companies, especially MSMEs. So just to add to what our good chairperson elaborated earlier.
Thank you very much, distinguished colleague, and you're absolutely correct. We were rated na yata as one of the most expensive real estate prices in Asia. Can you imagine? We were already competing with Singapore, mahal-mahal na ng Singapore. Sabi ko, paano yung mga kababayan natin Pilipino makaka-afford dito sa Metro Manila? So, tama-tama lang po yan. I think now it will temper the prices of real estate. More people can afford to buy and rent spaces, Filipinos can rent spaces in expats doing legal. I mean, even expats were complaining. I mean, I've spoken to French, British, foreign expats, American expats. They were having a hard time renting kasi presyong Pogo nga daw yung yung rent ng mga bahay na yun sa mga Forbes, tsaka sa Dasma, tsaka sa Sanlo and all that. So tama-tama, it will just do a correction. I think it will be good for all concerned. So please continue, Secretary. So our dream is to bring down the household expenditure for our GDP to more manufacturing, to more exports, to more services. Tama po yun,
More
Secretary.
investment, yeah.
And foreign investments, yeah.
Okay, next slide, please. All right. This is just to show that all the sectors of the economy have already surpassed their pre-pandemic levels as of the first quarter of 2024. Only, in the next slide, only two sectors are still struggling. One is the mining and quarrying. The other is the real estate that have still yet to reach their pre-pandemic levels. No? So that represents 6.4% of the GDP, right? And again, the next slide. This shows the real GDP per capita. As I said earlier, it has already exceeded the pre-pandemic levels by Q1 2024. Now, this is quite interesting. What you see here is a quite very buoyant labor market where you see a declining trend in the unemployment and underemployment rate. The current unemployment rate of 4.1% is actually very low compared to 2 decades ago. Well, it's the lowest since about 2005, and it's a number that's almost comparable to even mature economies. But what I will point out later and will elaborate later is what we need is really not just more employment at this stage. It's the quality of employment that's even more important. And that's the one that will deliver sustained.
Alam mo naman, Secretary, dito sa Senado, we push for labor rights and labor wages very seriously. And although the numbers are quite rosy at 4.1%, pero all surveys, self-rated poverty, mataas.
Yeah.
Ibig sabihin po, wala po silang, yung employed nga po sila, pero yung nauuwi po nila, hindi sapat sa pang-araw-araw nilang gastusin ng kanilang mga pamilya. Would you care to comment, Sec?
Yeah. I'll come back to this later, but just to point out now that the way employment here is measured doesn't take into account the quality of your employment. Whether you are working just 2 hours a day or 8 hours a day, it's the same count. Now, many of these employed people are in the very informal sector, very highly unproductive sectors, like you're watching your sari store that hardly sells 500 pesos a day. They are still employed, but that's not the kind of employment that we really want our population to have. We would want this enduring, higher earning, and that's why we have been pitching for investment, and I'll come back to this. That's why our pitch here is to diversify the sources of growth, the pillars of growth, so that we are not just dependent on consumption, we are not just dependent on services. That is the major concern now. It's not so much the employment level, it's the quality of employment level, it's the transformation that we want to see in our economy. All right. In the next slide, we see here the approved foreign investment. We are highlighting this because to get that quality of employment, you need massive investments. There's no shortcut. We need massive investments. And it's not just domestics, but also foreign. Now, these numbers tell us what DTI has been collecting, the approved investment, for approved foreign investment versus what the BSP has collecting as actual foreign investments, realized investments. That's in the
Yeah, we'd like to ask.
right-hand side.
We'd like to ask you about that, Secretary. I remember when I was still Senate President, and we'd go together with the President selling the country to different countries as well, foreign countries to invest in the Philippines. I recall that the President had mentioned that he would want a team that will actually follow up the actual investment. Hindi lang yung pledges kasi yung mga pirma-pirma, hanggang pirma lang yun, wala namang pumapasok dito. He's been wanting to have an actual investigation, not investigation, but to delve deeper into the actual signing of pledges into actual construction of these industries and these companies in the Philippines. Do you have that? Were you able to move forward from the numbers that they had pledged to the actual number of companies that were constructed and operated, or in the, of course, in the process of being building in the Philippines?
The actual numbers, those are captured by our statistical system, the Philippine Statistics Authority, as well as which also it captures from the BSP data. Those are the realized ones. The approved ones, those are recorded by DTI, and they have a summary of those. Now, so, understandably, there's quite a long period from pledges to actual realization, because some of this will require due diligence by the investing public, feasibility studies, financing, and so on. So there's likely some. It's not something that pledged in 1 year, and then that same year you see the investment. It doesn't work that way. In fact, for the renewable energy projects, I just discovered that it would take 5 years from intention to actual. Yes. So it is not that, but the president wants to see these decisions to be quickened and the realization of these pledges. He created, in fact, the office of the special assistant for investment and economic affairs, precisely for that.
Yung may kay Secretary Go?
Yeah, that's
right.
Secretary Go's working hand in hand with DTI to ensure that those discussions are followed up, and the concerns that they raise with respect to investing in the country are properly addressed. They always raise issues on the ease of doing business and the high cost of energy, and and dealing with.
Sinasabi ni Presidente, we have to handhold them and help them when they enter. It's not just a mere signing, picture taking, but the department should follow through. So that's why, ma'am, napakalaga ng DTI, Madam Recolizado. So that is why this is very important that the DTI is here as well. Maybe on a succeeding hearing, we can have a second hearing, so that they can explain to us what has been happening in terms of investment pledges with the President. 2 years have already passed. And I see the frustration of the President na gusto niya, ayaw nga niya ng groundbreaking, gusto niya ribbon cutting eh. Sabi niya, mas invite me na lang to the ribbon cutting para mabilis yung galaw. So it would be important that at least the BOI Board of Investments head would be here to give us an actual number of those companies that have already started construction or have started operations in the country. Or else all these figures are for naught. All the billions of dollars that they're saying is actually nothing but sugarcoating. And that is also frustration of NEDA because, as you mentioned earlier, the quality of jobs that these people will be working in rather than in informal sectors like sari-sari stores and the like. So please continue, Secretary, and we'll just have I'll just have another hearing together with my colleagues on the DTI on that particular issue on investments.
Okay, thank you. Next slide, please. Yeah, okay. Let me turn to inflation, which I'm sure particular interest here. The country's overall inflation is to 3.7% in June 2024 from 3.9% in May 2024. Now, the you note there, Mr. Chair, that since around July, August of 2022, food inflation has always been higher than non-food. As you can see in the red line above the blue line, with the blue line is your headline, the one we read in the newspapers. So the food inflation has been the major source of that headline inflation. And if we zoom that further, in the next slide, we see here the relative contribution of food in the total headline inflation. That's the orange line. That's the food, the contribution of the food. And as you can see, starting from January of 2022 or February of 2022, you see that contribution of food rising, and until today, that's the major source of inflation. And if we zoom that further, if we go inside the food inflation, in the next slide, you see the contribution of rice, right? And starting in around July of 2023, you see the contribution of rice inflation dominating the food inflation. And that's the reason why people are saying, I'm hungry, because you have a very high proportion of our people that's so just dependent on rice, and that's the rice that's causing the inflation. And so it continues today, and still it is a major challenge, although the president and cabinet has already did something to temper the food inflation, particularly rice inflation, and that's by addressing the tariff issue, and temporarily at least, while the world prices remain elevated. So that's where the problem is. And looking forward, Mr. Chair, the outlook for inflation, if you look at the next slide, that's we expect to see headline inflation reaching 3.1 for by 2025. Our target is 2 to 4%, and so at the moment we are there already. We are there already insofar as the headline inflation is concerned. But as I said, the food inflation is remain high. So.
Has it helped, Secretary, the lowering of rice tariffs? Has it helped on the pricing? Have you monitored? Maybe the DTI can answer. Has the DTI monitored the prices of rice? May konting baba from
Pababa, yeah.
what, from 60 pesos to 55, or what's it, from 55 to 50? Ano bang? Anyone have any idea? Sige, si Ma'am Amy.
Bumaba ng konti, pero erratic ang supply.
Yes.
Kasi the bodegas, the millers, the traders are holding on to stock.
It's not an easy problem because on the one hand, if you look at the forecast of rice prices globally, it's expected to decline in the longer term, but as of today, it still remains elevated. For so long as those prices are expected to remain elevated, of course, there are incentives for traders, for millers to hold on to their stocks. But at the same time, what we want to ensure is that that any manipulation there can be addressed, and that's why we need a tight monitoring, and even if I know Senator Amy will comment on this, but precisely what the Philippine Competition Commission should be running after, looking into deeper this. But when I left the PCC, that was a major concern for us.
We ratified the Anti-Smuggling, Agricultural Smuggling Act just recently, so the President will be signing it into law. Hopefully that will help our costs, the country's costs of bringing down rice prices. But at the same time, we really have to find how we can find a way to solve this anomaly of rice prices in the Philippines. Kasi I had the meeting, in our diplomatic corps meetings, I always ask the ambassador of Thailand, the ambassador of Cambodia, of course Vietnam, magkano yung presyo ng bigas nila doon. Ang presyo ng bigas nila doon sa Thailand, as of today, when I talked to him, was 25 Thai baht for, about 20 Thai baht sa pinakamahal nilang rice. So that's basically times 1.5, no? So mga 30. But an average daw of about 25 pesos to 30 pesos in Thailand. In Cambodia, it's cheaper. It was about 25 pesos. I'm talking about the equivalent in baht, 25 pesos. Sa Vietnam, lalo na ang mura. So we really have to find a way how these people, how these countries can be able to serve their populations with cheap rice. Tayo kasi parang naging gold yung rice, kasi rice is life. So it's like the most important commodity next to oil, I think, next to gasoline and crude oil. So nagiging commodity siya na talagang pinagsasamantala ng mga traders. So we really have to figure out that way of solving that.
What many don't realize, Mr. Chair, is that compared to the 1970s, we had quite a very successful rice production program in the 70s up to the early 80s. Yeah, but then population was only less than 50 million at that time. Right. Today, that's more than double, and yet production has hardly, so it's, but also the productivity. Also the productivity. We haven't invested enough, for example, in irrigation. You could have easily doubled production if you have more reliable irrigation systems, but we are not investing sufficient. So your total demand for rice is growing because of population, but your production is like that. So that it's widening gap between what we need and what our local economy can produce. So if you don't import, of course, prices will skyrocket,
Yes.
given the widening gap. That's why. But in the longer term, we should really invest in productivity. As you can see, what I find anomalous in our situation is that agriculture is only contributing less than 1% of the growth, when in countries at similar levels of development like us are delivering more. Agriculture is delivering. So that's why we really
I can give you one
have
simple
to-
answer, Your Honor. Aside from the fact that we have calamities left and right, both man-made and natural, it's something that we should discuss in a longer period of time. Kasi ako licensed agriculturist ako, Sec. So kakakuha ko lang ng oath ko as a licensed agriculturist. I'm a Los Baños grad. So, and even my master is environment and natural resources management, upland management. And it's really the problem of land. It's also the problem of land. I mean, there's very difficult to consolidate land in the Philippines. Overlapping titles, overlapping claims. And because of that, nakatiwangwang yung lupa sa probinsya kasi nobody wants to touch it with a 10-foot pole. I mean, a Senator Gatchalian, who's a businessman, can go to Bulacan and try to aggregate land of 100 hectares to plant rice to make a corporate farm. The law prevents him from doing so. unless he rents it. But renting it is too expensive and too tedious, especially when you have to talk to 30 or 40 families to consolidate the land. Land consolidation is very difficult. So that is another topic that I think we have to take up. I would like to file a bill to allow land consolidation once again after the Agrarian Reform Program. I know it's very controversial. Eh. Very controversial yan. Ako, for the record, I agree on social justice. Yung walang lupa, bigyan ng lupa. Pero pagkatapos po ng 10-year prescription period, may 10-year prescription period na hindi pwedeng galawin. Pwede na pong maibenta ng may-ari yun kasi alam mo, nag-graduate na sa 4-piece. Wala na sang farm worker eh. Yung farmer na binigyan mo 20 years ago is now 65 years old, cannot anymore till his land. But he wants to sell it. He cannot sell it under the law. It has to go back to it has to go to another beneficiary. So, hindi niya may benta, ayaw naman ipagloko. Kaya amin ito. So, it's a mess, to be very honest. That's why agriculture is suffering, to be very honest about it. But, if we allow land consolidation later on, eventually, we should pass the National Land Use Act. Why? Because we don't want land consolidation to be all converted naman to malls and subdivision. Yan ang ayoko din. Kasi mawawalan talaga tayo ng lupa para sa agriculture. Alam ko baka may magalit sa akin dito, nakasama. Pero ang importante kasi dyan is if we allow land consolidation, if it's agricultural land, limited to agriculture only. So if you want to consolidate, let's say 50, yung irrigated, dapat bawal talaga. Pero kung agricultural designated yan, agriculture, dapat agriculture lang. Para yung unscrupulous individuals who want to consolidate and i-convert nila, ay mawawalan talaga tayo ng agriculture sector. We will drop our agriculture sector. So I'm with you there, Sec. One day, maybe I'll meet with you for coffee together with your team on how we can come up with a very socially acceptable land consolidation for agricultural production and limit it to that. Na walang conversion for other, industrial or subdivision or commercial. So para sa ganun, more people like Amy Marcos, when Madam Amy will retire from, magaling to sa agriculture eh. Kung pag-retire niyan sa politics, I'm sure gusto niya mag-farming, di ba? O she wants to buy 50 hectares of land, tatanim siya ng malunggay for malunggay essence na i-export sa abroad or for essential oils. Mahirap, ang hirap gawin talaga, Sec. Alam mo, they're pushing now this durian from Malaysia, yung Musang King. That's my favorite. I'm pushing also for durian production. And you mentioned it pala. I'd like to say thank you. You mentioned it in one of your interviews that durian is one of the up-and-coming exportable fruits. Pero when you look at the areas kung maghanap ka ng lupa, may mga investor pumunta sa akin, Malaysian, pwede ba mag-partner, maghanap tayo ng lupa? 100 hectares, impossible. Kasi how can you get contiguous? Meron tingi-tingi, 2 dyan, 1 dyan, taniman mo. How will you irrigate it? You need to do drip irrigation. And you cannot do drip irrigation if your properties are tingi-tingi and they're far and wide. Hindi po siya contiguous. So nafu-frustrate yung investor. Maalis talaga sila, wala tayong magagawa. So yan ang problema natin. We cannot develop, we have such a wonderful agriculturally available land sana. But because of the land consolidation and buying and setting up these ventures na napakahirap, talagang walang papasok sa agriculture sector natin. Walang papasok. So I was the speaker in the yung licensed, it was the Convention for Licensed Agriculturists, the summit. Nung binanggit ko sa kanila, palakpakan sila. Pero nung sinabi ko, para sa agrikultura lang, hindi pwedeng i-convert pag napasa na natin yung Land Use Act, lalong sumigaw yung mga tao, tama po yan, ganyan. Kasi wala na silang trabaho, licensed agriculturists, but what are they going to be, where will they work? So, I agree that we should focus on the agriculture sector. Alam po ni President, Please, I'm sorry I disturbed your presentation.
Yes, I just was a little disappointed that so far the only thing that I've seen with regard to cheaper rice is really the constant lowering of the tariffs. Naka third round na po tayo, hindi naman bumababa ang presyo. Nag-umpisa tayo sa 50% and it's gone down to 35. We're now at 15%. Kailanman hindi naman bumaba ng konti, 3 to 5 pesos, largely insignificant. So a very quick review of the proposed GAA for 2025 does not indicate any significant change in our agricultural policy. How much does NEDA participate in all the DBCC and hearings? Like I said, I came from another era when NEDA and Dr. Sikat were God. So I'm very, very perplexed that there's nothing significant in both the DA budget and the DENR budget, which should be in tandem now that titles are being distributed. The condonation is in full swing. Certainly, rural development should be in the offing, but it doesn't seem so. Like Senator Subiri mentioned, there is no mention of serious consolidation of land, of scaling up, of investment in agricultural infrastructure. In fact, they further debased the irrigation budgets, and there is no real effort to build great silos and post-harvest facilities. What's the score? Are we not going to see any action on the government end aside from tariff reductions? I mean, how much more can we reduce from 15%? Nasa zero na tayo sa susunod.
With respect to that, my view, and the decision made that the tariff of 15% is temporary. If the world prices will
I beg to disagree po. Secretary, it says 2028, di po ba?
yeah, but
That's hardly temporary. That's
no, ma'am.
they put it together with the codification of the tariff scales.
Yeah.
So it ended up being a 5-year period as well. So hanggang 2028, that's hardly the 6-month to 1-year period that we understand to be an emergency
No.
measure.
In the EO 62, ma'am, may phrase doon na nakalagay na except for rice, it will be reviewed every 4 months, every 4 months. So,
Review doesn't mean it will be it will be revised, however, di ba? Puros
Yeah.
review lang yan, malay natin. Pero in theory, as it stands today, 2028. Kaya hindi talaga siya effective. Alam naman natin ang government review, lahat tayo review ng review, 6 months, 1 year, 2 years, review lang. Pero hindi kinakaltas.
no, from my own perspective, I'm not putting that, but that I think the farm gate prices would have to be protected. And I think that if world prices would go down so much, that would further depress farm gate prices. Then I think we should have. I've always been in favor of variable tariff. Just for the record, but of course WTO did not doesn't
Yes,
like that
I know
anymore.
that I'm preaching to
But,
the choir, sir.
Yeah, so I think that if we can, if the world prices have come down, and we are actually establishing now that threshold, we are together with DA, we are trying to come up with almost like a automatic adjustment so that we can make the proper representation to the cabinet, to the president, and
Hindi, para kasing hindi tumutugma eh. Meron Department of Agriculture, puros importation naman ang tinutulak. Pag tinignan mo naman yung sa DAR at saka sa DA at sa DENR, sa NIA, pag tinignan mo yung mga budget nila, hindi naman talaga naka-align dun sa sinasabing post-harvest development, scaling and consolidation of land holdings, agricultural investment. Wala naman siya dun sa budget. Di ba sinasabi, put your money where your mouth is. It certainly isn't there.
ng increase ng budget for DA 2023, 2024, but for 2025 there is a some adjustment there. I think that, but because of the substantial increases in the past
Pa nga eh.
2 years,
Bumaba
bumaba
pa
nga
nga eh.
ito, but it's essentially that. But we have
Ganon din yung NIA. Pinag-usapan
secured,
natin yung irigasyon. Nangalahati, di ba?
ang laki ng bagong loans natin for DA, ma'am, for farm to market roads, for
BRDP
other,
pa rin yun eh. Long delayed yun. That's not a genuine increase.
we just approved at least during kay presidente na ito, ma'am, kay President Marcos na yan, I remember. So there are major programs there that are at least those are sustainable. And I think what we need to do to ensure though is that we can monitor the implementation of these projects so that they are.
So you're saying po, wala sa GAA, but the changes are actually evident
No,
in
it's
the
probably
foreign
no,
loans.
it's
I'll
probably
investigate
more on
po.
the composition. Let me look at how the composition changes in the because there are certainly projects that were reduced
Kasi
on
it's
the
not
amount, but they were
perceptible po
increased.
from 2023 to 2025. Hindi ko po nakikita
Yeah,
na nag-a-align tayo sa ganito.
let's maybe Yusek Joji can
I'd like to recognize
provide,
Undersecretary of the DBM, Yusek Basilio, can give us some at least inputs on the discussion, particularly in agri-sector. Bumaba eh. Nakita ko sa news kagabi, bumaba yung agricultural spending for the DA, ang budget ng DA,
but the composition though.
by ilang percent, I forget how many percent. Is there a explanation? Bakit? Baba?
Dun po sa NEP, thank you for the recognition, Mr. Chair. So, as presented yesterday, in the submission of the budget, the DBM indicated that for the development of our agriculture industry and achieve food security, the agriculture sector comprising of DA, Department of Agriculture, its attached agencies, and the Department of Agrarian Reform will use its 211.3 billion allocation or 3.3% to support our farmers and fisher folks. So parang diretso. Some of the programs decrease ba yun? Cellphone namin. Dito po sa notes ko na hindi final, both against the NEP from last year and GAA, Department of Agriculture budget represents an increase. Yung increase pa rin. So as compared to the NEP, yeah,
Thing is year in, year out. Yung NEP nung 2024
and
is lower than the NEP now, but that's NEP, hindi yan GAA.
yes,
But it is what you propose in the NEP now is still lower than the GAA of 2024. Kasi yung GAA ang pinagbabasihan natin eh. Ang sabi sa news. Yeah, it was in the news yesterday. I think we watched the same news. Nakalagay doon kasi bumaba nga yung agriculture and social service. DSWD bumaba. Yung DA bumaba. Ang tumaas, ang DOTR yatang tumaas.
most of the reasons nga po, Mr.
Oh.
Chair, is
Oh.
yun nga, comparing NEP 2025 to NEP 2024, generally there is an increase. Kasi the overall budget have increased by 10.1%, and this is distributed among agencies. But compared to the GAA, dun po nagkaroon ng differences.
Nako-correct. Nako-correct. O sige, tuloy lang natin yung briefing kasi I would like to also ask the other agencies after the NEDA. I would like to ask the DOF, particularly on the loans.
Yes.
So please continue.
Konti na lang, Chair. Okay, growth outlook. Let's move on to. Let me note that these are the numbers, targets, growth targets that our DBCC members have agreed upon and reflected in the NEP. So for 2024, we are expecting 6 to 7%. I think I'm confident we'll hit, will be within that range.
Second quarter, what do you think? Are you
Uh,
going to be higher than 5.7?
in 2 weeks, I think.
In 2 weeks
we'll
ba?
have-
Oh, you don't have to tell us. We'll wait for the
August
surprise.
8, August 8, next
August
week.
8, sige po.
Next week, yeah. I still don't know what the number is. But 2025, 6.5 to 7.5%, and for the rest of the administration, 2026, 2028, we are keeping the original target of 6.5 to 8%. So that's so our NEP submission is again, it's based on these growth targets. And let me come to what I mentioned earlier about this upper middle income country, which seems to have interested many. We just wanted to note that all this talked about upper middle income country, the Philippines going there. I think that if we achieve the lower end of the growth targets for 2024 and 2025, then we should be an upper middle income country by 2025, by next year.
Ang problema ko lang dyan kasi, Sec, is we are going to be a middle income economy or country, but only on consumerism and on the backs of our OFWs. Kaya tama po kayo, unless the DTI and all the other departments move for the actual construction of these industries in the Philippines, parang malabo yata, parang fake yung pagka middle income economy natin. Kasi OFW driven yan eh. Kung may OFWs, there are heroes, but they are also susceptible to global pressure. Kung biglang biglang nagkagera dun sa Europe because of Russia, Ukraine, and the EU and NATO, the OFWs in Europe will have a difficult time sending funds to the Philippines. Bagsak na naman ang GDP growth rate natin. Same goes to us here. If there's a high tension within the region, bagsak na naman yung pagpadala ng remittances sa atin. We need to be able to stand on our own 2 feet and not purely a consumption-driven economy through the backs of our OFWs. So tama po yan. I agree with you. We can achieve that. But if you ask me, it's hollow. I think we have to create more export industries, improve our agricultural sector, improve our rural development in the countryside before we can actually be called a true middle income economy. Am I correct, boss, or am I wrong? Professor?
Yes, of course. But this is, this is the metric devised by the World Bank in classifying whether we like it or not. If we achieve the growth that we are targeting, we will be classified as upper middle income country. Yeah. So this, yeah.
Debate on that. We just want to make sure that the middle income threshold is sustainable.
Ang ano lang rito,
Sustainable.
ang potential implication kasi nito is once you become an upper middle income country, you may have low priority already for ODA, yung mga grants, for example. But although we have been talking with our partners, that they tell us that there are other ways of packaging so it does look like that we will not completely lost.
Importante lang kasi Sec RCs, siyempre magsasalita na naman sa next SONA si President in the next few SONAs, and he mentions that dapat maramdaman ng taong bayan. Dapat maramdaman ng taong bayan. Yung sa Maramag, Bukidnon, kung saan po ako nakatira, or sa Cagayan de Oro, or sa Cebu, or sa Samar, or Leyte, where this lovely lady is from, half her body is from Leyte, the other half is from your home province of Ilocos, na maramdaman po nila yung upper middle income economy. So yan ang importante kasi pag yung self-rated poverty mataas palagi, hindi siya, for me, we have not succeeded in our dream of uplifting each and every Filipino from the levels that they are in now. So these numbers are great. You know, when it was, naalala mo, Madam Amy, kung nung si Carl Chua pa yung
No, si Carl.
secretary noon, talaga nagdidebate kami dito kasi always rosy, maganda mga numbers na, but we always tell them, hindi ganun sa ground. Hindi nararamdaman. So, I know you're more sensitive to that. I know Sec RC is more sensitive to that.
Just for the record,
Yes, sir.
Chair, no, I think one thing that's different this time, despite the inflation that we have seen, is we look at the 2021 and 2023, what we notice is the increases, the proportionate increases in the real incomes after adjusting for inflation of the bottom 20% of our population was faster than the top 20 or 30% of the. So that means it's inclusive. I've been monitoring this kind of data for the last 40 years, but I am so encouraged by that development that it's more inclusive. It could have been far even more inclusive if not for the food inflation. So really, so our trust in this administration is to manage that inflation, to ensure that it comes to a lower and make that that quality of jobs improve by.
I believe, Secretary, the PSA, no, the Philippine Statistics Authority is going to do a house-to-house survey once again.
Yeah.
It's due every 5 years. So
Yes.
until 2025, we'll have a new one.
We'll have we are undertaking the census with this house to house, and also we are conducting the CBMS, the community-based monitoring system.
Totoo ba? 100 pesos daily ang poverty threshold na ginagamit ng PSA?
Not 100 pesos a day.
Ang alam ko, binagsak sa 100 pesos kaya biglang 2.5 million are out
No,
of poverty.
when we measure poverty, we keep the standard the same. We adjust for the inflation. But that's it. We do not change the purchasing power of the.
Ayun na nga, pero yung 100 pesos katatawanan na eh.
Hindi nga kasi what we wanted to make sure is that as we are comparing one year with another, we are using the same 12, meter. That if you are using 12-inch ruler, it's 12-inch ruler everywhere.
You're doing a house-to-house census now.
Yeah,
I think throughout the country.
Yeah.
We'll get a clearer picture
Yes.
very soon.
Yes, and this time because it's already computerized,
Yes.
electronic, you will get the result immediately after the end of the year.
My
Fantastic.
PSA contact just corrected me po. It's not 100 pesos a day, it's 79 pesos a day.
Per individual.
Seryoso ba to?
91 per person per day. Yeah. Per person per day.
Per person per day at 79 pesos?
91 pesos.
91? Ang sabi sa akin, 79 na lang eh. Ang
Baka,
layo naman sa katotohanan.
baka hindi pa adjusted for inflation yan. Kasi as we come up with a new number, with new data in, for example, yung last natin is 2023, we adjust the threshold.
More realistic threshold because this is really beyond the actual market prices that we know.
Eventually, we can do that too, adjusting it. But whether we come up with a new measure or stick to the old measure, the important thing is we keep it constant para we can compare apple to apple. Right.
So Sec, I know you still have about 5 pages. Baka we can limit it na lang to the drivers of growth. Thank you, ma'am. And yung risk of growth outlook.
Yes.
Yung Pogo, we discussed it already earlier, so okay na po yan. And then your priority bills,
Okay.
we can discuss.
Yeah,
We can make it quick na
Right.
lang.
The next one is risk to growth outlook. I think that we have stated this many times. There are domestic risks, there are external risks. Yung sa external risk, most serious concern natin dito is this geopolitical tensions at saka yung any global supply disruptions, no? Doon naman sa domestic risk, of course, calamities, natural calamities. We hope that for this year and next, we don't have any serious La Nina associated uh, calamity, no? And so that's one. And then we are hoping that there are no potential hitches, or there will be no hitches in the implementation of the new procurement act, because that will change the way we do contracts, and that will mean all the agencies would have to be properly trained on how to go along with that. And what we hope here is that that will not cause any delay in the release of budgets for projects. And so I think that's what I see as a potential risk under the domestic category. And then I think, there's another one that I would like to put to the fiscal picture is very important for the economic managers, because any changes in the deficits or in the debt as a proportion of GDP can impact on the economy, and both in the short term and the long term. So as we call upon your support, Chair, and Win, that we won't have surprises in the sense of passing bills, laws that might erode our tax or revenue intake. So yung tax or revenue eroding measures that we should avoid, hopeful unless extremely necessary. And then we ask for your support for these revenue enhancing measures, which are included in the LEDAC measures. So that's all. The next slides, the risk mitigating measures. Basically, it's the other side of the mirror. What I mentioned, and I can the next slide here is the LEDAC. These are what we discussed at the last LEDAC meeting as a priority for passage before the end of this Congress. Reforms to Philippine capital markets, the amendments to the Right of Way Act, the rationalization of mining fiscal regime, the Department of Water Resources, amendments to the Foreign Investors Long-Term List Act. This may also have to do with the consolidation that you may mentioned earlier, Mr. Chair. The Archipelagic Sea Lanes Act, the excise tax on single-use plastics, amendments to the electric power industry reform. This is to address the issues raised by our investors and the high cost of energy. And the Create More Act, still some of the concerns of the industry, and to make our industries more competitive. And finally, the amendments to the rice tariffication law, because I think that's it's with Congress now, and it's ending this year, so that we need to have.
But wala yung bill mo, Department of Economic and National Economic Development Authority. Pambira naman. Nag-hearing tayo, wala pala doon yung bill nyo.
It's just between your committee and us.
Tayo lang pala nag-usap.
As a member of the economic team, nakakahiya naman ho na yung Neda bilang but it's very important, and I appeal for your support. But I think that if we can have this, good, but if plus the Neda bill, even better.
That's the icing on the cake.
Yeah.
Yes, Secretary. Well, we thank you for your presentation, Secretary. Rest assured na marami na ako na-sponsor na measures, and when I focus on these measures, I make sure that I'm output driven, so I will really make sure that we will pass these measures. So particularly on your bill, we can discuss this in a little bit. I just don't want to veer away from the discussion on the economic outlook of the Philippines. But rest assured, you will have our utmost support in the passage of a measure. Author na rin ako ng I'm ease of doing yung yung ARTA, I'm the father of ARTA, I'm the father of the MINDA, I'm the father of the National Commission for Muslim Filipinos. Ano pa mga agencies na create natin? I'm the father of BARM under the BOL, which I sponsored together with Senator Gatchalian in the previous Congresses. So rest assured, we'll have our full support. We'll push this forward. Pero sikreto lang pala natin, di pa naman. Paano naman sa DBM? Di na kakausapin natin sila. How about in the House, Secretary? Has it already been approved in the House?
So we're just waiting for the committee report, but they have gone the
So they're moving
Yes,
also.
right. But for our colleagues, this has already also gone through their comments. They have already commented on the.
Yeah. So,
on the bill.
I'll just talk about just the economic outlook really quickly on the DOF, then we can discuss the bill, the next topic of the agenda. Please, it's a working lunch. Kain na po kayo. I know you're hungry as I am. We'd like to ask, Asek ba po kayo pong magsasagot? Asek, Neil? May presentation ba kayo? Mabilis ba or?
Sir, we prepared the presentation for the economic outlook, but that's pretty much covered already by Sec Balisacan.
Is there any
Except-
topics that is it the same? more or less?
Sir, except just for the fiscal consolidation
Sir,
path.
press,
and,
ipakita mo, partner.
Okay.
Baka we can abbreviate it.
Yeah, okay.
Kasi some of these figures was already
Yes.
taken up by our dear secretary.
Yeah.
Pagkain ni Senator.
Okay. Yeah, we can go quickly to slide 9. Yeah, next slide. Yeah. Yeah, so this one just lang, Mr. Chair. So considering the domestic headwinds as well as external headwinds discussed earlier, we see that we will have a slower fiscal consolidation path, but still within the framework that we intend to go through for the medium term. Then next slide, please. There is just a note on that for this year we have increased our revenue non-tax revenue targets. Next slide. Yeah, so that's just the slide reflecting on the the DOF increased non-tax revenue targets. Nonetheless, we can go to a few slides further. The important part is that we see that national government debt remains sustainable and is set to decline in from 60.1% in Q1 2024. Next slide, please.
Yeah, before we move to that slide,
Yes, sir. Yeah.
before, or yes, on the increased, on the revenue targets, which slide do you want to present? This one or the other one?
Just
Kasi I wanted to ask just a simple question on the revenue targets. Our budget has increased from what was last year? 5.3? Well, ano? Ano yan? 5.7 trillion. This year, it has increased to 6.2 trillion. So you're looking at an additional increase of about more or less 500, over 500 billion pesos, diba? I want to see now your revenues vis-a-vis expenditure. Kasi I want to ask now the DOF, saan natin kukunin yan? Utang ba yan ulit? So what are our revenues? What are your estimated revenues for 2025? 2024, 2025.
can we go to the previous slide? That's on the previous slide. Yeah. Okay,
Tama,
so-
nandito si Senator Gatchalian. Siya yung ways. He will
Yes.
find the ways and the
That's-
means.
Yeah, so sir, ito po yung expected revenues natin for 2025. Total revenues at 4.6 at 0.46 trillion, sir. Yeah. So there's of course there's an expected shortfall which would be covered through a few of loans. Yeah.
That's about 3 trillion. You're looking at the low, no, sorry. So 2 trillion. 2 trillion pesos.
Yes, I think
Correct?
there's a projection that I think the total debt would reach at about 17 trillion for next year given the budget.
Ilan?
17, sir.
1.7?
17, no? Projection. Then, yeah.
No, wait.
17, yeah. Tama ba? That's the total na, sir. Total.
That's the total
The
debt.
total debt stock.
What is the total debt as of now?
Just a moment, sir. Total.
Ano yung utang ng ating bansa
Yes.
as of now? Kung ilang trilyon?
That's at no, the external debt.
16 lang. Ilan?
14.6. Yeah, we're at 15.18, sir, as of end
15.8.
18. 18, sir.
18. So 15.18 trillion yung utang ng ating
Yeah.
bansa.
As of end February 2024. Yeah.
And then you're looking at by 2025 yung utang ng bansa dahil sa ating budget deficit is 17. Binanggit mo na kanina.
Yes, sir. That's at 17.35.
17.35 trillion. So
That's basically the deficit.
an additional over 2 trillion pesos of loans of debt. Yeah. Kaya natin bayaran yan, Sec RC, DOM?
I think
Kaya natin i-service yung loans natin? I know there's a formula that you say
the appropriate measure for us is as a share, the debt as a share of GDP. I think we are we are a fiscal consolidation that brings us to a lower number, from around 62% to or 61%, not to 50.
Yes, sir.
nandyan.
It's the
Ah,
slide,
ito.
sir, that projects it.
Yeah, so as long as we can avoid going up, I think that's very much acceptable.
If we control
Yeah.
the debt,
Yeah, we can.
control the debt year in, year out,
Yeah.
till 2028, you're looking at the 56.3%.
Yeah,
Yes.
because the benchmark for developing countries like us is something like 70%, no,
70.
of GDP. So we are quite way below the that's why IMF is not looking at us because we're in good,
We have good fiscal management, I should say. So
And to also keep it mostly on the domestic financing side, sir. So we are on a hedge from the foreign exchange rate.
yes. Okay. On the tax measures that you were saying, Secretary Balisacan and the DOF, itong mga priority measures natin, anong makukuha natin, anong takeaway natin dito para sa increase on revenue? Ito ba, aside from the create more, which of course will be able to bring in more investors to the country, itong excise tax on single-use plastics, ito lang ba ang nakikita natin, DOF? Asek? How about yung sa mining regime? Di ba may mining regime? Is there going to be an increase in taxes on the miners or decrease?
want to align our tax regime to international standards, especially in major mining countries. Some I think will mean up, some items will mean down, depending on the fiscal.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Yes,
Yeah.
please,
So, sir, there are 6 priority tax measures being considered by the DOF. So that's the VAT on non-resident digital service providers, create more, motor vehicle road users tax, package 4 of the CTRP, mining fiscal regime, and the excise tax on single-use plastics. So all combined for this 6 priority tax measures. So for 2025, the expected revenue impact is 28.4 billion. 2026 would be 47.7. 2027 would be 41.8, and 2028 would be 41.9. I just don't have the disaggregated per measure, sir. We can provide that. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. How about yung, we just passed recently, thanks to our good chairman, Senator Gatchalian, yung the taxes on digital services. Di ba yung mga Netflix,
Yes.
mga ganon. May, ano bang nangyari dyan sa batas na yan? Is it being implemented? What is your revenue projection for that measure that we approved?
Just a moment, let me check, sir.
Hapon lang na-ratify. But what is your projected revenue on those transactions? Makakatulong yan sa outlook natin, no? Sa fiscal outlook natin.
Yes, sir. If I can have a minute to check wala yung file ko dun.
Baka alam ni Chairman. Alam na kagad ni Chairman.
Billion a year.
8 billion a year. Di dagdag income sa bansa. Okay. All right. So yung sa DTI lang, Madam, o sabi mo naman, Secretary, I'll have another hearing. I just want to hear the outlook. Maganda yung presentation ni Sec RC, but all dependent yan on exports. All dependent yan on manufacturing, which is the DTI's ambit. And so we'll need to have the Secretary come over and together with the BOI, si Yusek Perry, to make a nice presentation on what is actually, from the start of the Marcos administration, ano na ba talaga ang pumapasok. Ano lang naman yan eh. If that's probably less than 500 companies that have been pledged support to maybe less than 1,000 companies pledged support to the administration during the trips of the president. We'd like to know how many have already set up shop or are setting up shop in the Philippines. Para may hard facts tayo. Unless alam po ng DOF. Hindi alam ng DOF so far.
Sir, in terms of pledges versus investment, is that correct?
Yes.
Sir, we are unable to keep track of that as of now, so we'll need
Yeah.
to. We need
So we'll have to
coordinate
revert to the
with
DTI and the
yeah.
BOI. Okay. So ma'am, very important po yan. Masyadong importante po yan. So I'll just call for another hearing. Anyway, friendly hearing naman to. We just want to come out with the facts. We will support you on whatever legislation you need and implementation of government laws to our oversight functions. The DBM, any questions, Your Honor, for the DBM? Yes, Yusek, proceed.
We have the information already on comparison between National Expenditure Program 2025 submitted to Congress, House and Senate against 2024 GAA budget for this year. For example, Department of Agriculture 2024 GAA budget is 114.3 billion. In the NEP, we have proposed 129 billion pesos. So that's 13% increase. So you have additional irrigation projects and others. Department of Agrarian Reform from 8.6 billion in the current year's GAA. The NEP 2025 involves 11.1 billion already for the Department of Agrarian Reform. That represents 29% increase in there. So they have ICC approved bridges in the agrarian bridges and farm to market roads among agrarian reform communities, among other new projects, flagship projects of the administration. Thank you.
So thank you very much for that, Yusek.
Presentation on.
Yes, we'd like to recognize the BSP. They have a presentation as well. Ma'am Lara, on monetary policy. Could we make it brief para the rest, please eat your lunch. Baka lumamig yan. While we're listening to the presentation of BSP. You're recognized, madam.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Thank you for allowing us to discuss the state of the economy and the outlook. This is in the context of the monetary policy. So just to start, next slide, please. So this was discussed extensively earlier, but just to point out that we are already seeing inflation pressures easing. So except for rice, which is the red bar, price increases for most food and non-food items have eased due to improved supply conditions. So barring any additional supply shocks, inflation is expected to revert to within the target starting in the second half of 2024 and in 2025. So we show this in the next slide. So here we present our latest risk-adjusted forecast for 2024 and 2025. It is at 3.1%. So this is based on data available as of the last policy meeting of the board last June 27. So what's new in the forecast is that we incorporated the impact of the potential impact of the reduction in the tariff on imported rice. But we still note that there are still some upside risks coming from higher prices of other food commodities, particularly corn, pork, fish, and sugar. And we also continue to see upside risk from higher transport charges and electricity rates. But nevertheless, the BSP anticipates that price pressures could ease further in the second half of the year with the implementation of the reduced tariff on rice and the other non-monetary intervention measures. And so if sustained, this improvement in the inflation outlook would allow scope to possibly consider a less restrictive monetary policy stance going forward. But again, we note that there is still uncertainty in the external environment that calls for caution against any potential spillovers, including those in the financial markets. So in the next slide, we just present also, just to confirm also our outlook for inflation, we also conduct a regular survey of inflation by external forecasters, and they also note that based on their expectations, inflation is also expected to settle within the target for 2024, 2025, and 2026. But the analysts in our survey still continue to note that there are also upside risks that continue to dominate the outlook, owing mainly to supply side and potential second round effects. So in the next slide, we just reiterate that while we see inflation dynamics are improving, we continue to support the national government's non-monetary measures for continued caution against potential spillovers. So we just present here a summary of all of the measures, both short-term and long-term, that would complement also the efforts of the BSP to manage demand-side inflationary pressures. Okay, then the next slide. So just to note also that amid the tightening of monetary policy, we see recent indicators continuing to point to moderation under tight financial conditions. But nevertheless, we continue to see inflation growth to be close to the low end of the DBCC's target, and that prospects for economic activity remain largely intact, and domestic growth is expected to stay on track with its medium-term trend, despite the tight monetary policy conditions. In the next slide, we also note that another challenge to monetary policy are the uncertainties in the external environment. But nevertheless, we note that there are still buffers that could help shield the economy from potential spillovers. So the main sources of resilience for the economy, of course, we have the revenues from BPOs, our revenues from overseas Filipino cash remittances, and they are expected to grow 3% annually for both 2024 and 2025, thereby providing additional disposable income for households. And then we also present here that we also show here the country's gross international reserves, which stood at 105.2 billion as of end June data. And this represents a more than adequate liquidity buffer equivalent to 7.7 months worth of imports of goods and payments of services and primary income. It is also about 6 times the country's short-term external debt based on original maturity, and 3.8 times based on residual maturity. So these external buffers have helped us navigate the exchange rate volatility. So in the next slide, we show that the peso, along with the other currencies of major and regional economies, have continued to react to movements of the US dollar This is influenced mainly by the broad US dollar strength, followed by the US Fed's decision on maintaining a restrictive policy stand. But more recently, we are showing some appreciation of the peso, and this has been observed amid rising expectations that the US Fed and the BSP will start easing policy rates within the year. Then next slide, please. So, so in addition to the external buffers, we note that our banking system has remained resilient. It has provided a significant safety net against potential disruptions arising from tight financing conditions and geopolitical uncertainties. So our latest indicators, as shown in the slide, continue to suggest that our banking system continues to stand in a position of strength. We see this through the continued growth in assets, deposits, and profit, as well as liquidity buffers and ample provisioning. Banks have likewise able to maintain capital that is well above the threshold of the BSP and the BIS, which confirms the BSP's confidence that the policy rate adjustments were done without risking financial stability. So just to end the presentation, allow me to highlight some of the key points. Next slide, please. So prevailing inflation conditions have allowed the BSP to maintain policy settings for the time being. Nonetheless, inflation is projected to move to the midpoint of the target this year and next year. So should the inflation outlook continue to improve, the Monetary Board would have scope to consider a less restrictive monetary policy stance toward in the succeeding policy meetings. But we also would like to emphasize that the last mile of disinflation is often the most challenging for central banks, and this last mile often requires more nuance. But we will continue to ensure that monetary policy settings would remain in line with our mandate of promoting price stability that is supportive of sustainable economic growth. So this ends the presentation, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. First of all, thank you, Ma'am Lara. Senator Gatchalian.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to go back to I saw in the NEDA presentation, and NEDA or DBM can answer this. The contribution to our economy by government expenditure is during 2022 at the height was 10%, but in 2023 it's 1.5%, and then in 2024 Q1 is 4.3%. This is something that we can control. No, government can control, meaning if we can spend everything that has been appropriated and spend it fast and according to time frame, then it can boost growth. No, but historically this has been quite a challenge for many administrations actually. I remember during DBCC hearings, during budget hearings, senators will always point out and even call out some of the agencies to make sure that spending is efficient and according to time frame. So I just want to ask NEDA or DBM, has this been addressed? Because we don't want another during the DBCC, we don't want this to be raised again, because again, it's something that government can control. No? It's within our control. It's within the management of the administration to spend this. So have we addressed underspending and also efficiency issues in terms of spending? Maybe NEDA or DBM, anyone can
To respond.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
I know the answer, but I would let the DBM.
Yes, and then maybe secretary can follow. Just provide some data and policies that have been implemented. So we know from last year there were catch-up plans that were required from agencies, and for this year we did it much in advance, knowing that there could still be some agencies who have not been used to implementing fast their projects and programs. So for this, for example, for the first semester of 2024, the DBM has already required agencies for catch-up plans, and in addition, um, submission of the budget utilization as of first semester. They are some of them have already submitted their utilization and budget data, and they have the deadline for this is July 30th. So they have 30 days to consolidate all their accounts. As of this time, disbursement of the national government have been seen to have reached already 2.763 trillion pesos, which is 14.6% higher from the previous year's experience. And these were mainly due to the following. For example, for infrastructure and capital outlays, we have the DPWH, which had its road infrastructure program that have been implemented much earlier, and then Department of National Defense for their defense modernization projects. For MOE, we have improved processing and spending in terms of the 4Ps of the SWD and the social pension for indigent senior citizens, plus protective services for individuals and families programs, because at this point in time, compared with last year, the list of beneficiaries are more cleaner and more efficient in terms of systems administration. We also have the DOH, and we have released already the health emergency benefits and allowances. That's one also reason for the increase in spending. Plus, COMELEC has already been spending for their preparatory activities for the national and local elections next year. LGUs, national tax allotment is higher this year, precisely because the basis for their tax allocation this year is from the 3-year from the 3-year prior to this year, which already experienced a higher tax collection from the pandemic years previous to that particular year. Another increase in spending was for the first semester is interest payments, precisely because of higher interest rates and inflation accrued to the debt payments of the government. But at the very least, according to the DBC's fiscal program for spending, we are 24.6 billion peso higher than the program. So the DBM has been encouraging agencies to implement their early procurement activities. And according to the GPPB, close to 50% of major agencies' projects have already been procured early, short of award, pending, of course, approval of the budget and pending the start of the beginning of the year, for example, for 2024. And on the part of the DBM, releases have been made as early as January 1st of this year, especially for those projects and programs that are implementation ready and that are already included in the NEP, but then consequently approved in the GAA, because we know that they are already again implementation ready. Thank you.
Secretary, you want to add to that, or that's yeah, we'll just submit to us a report on that, because personally, I'm also quite concerned, and every DBCC we would raise that, and it's something, like I said, no, it's within government's control to spend faster and to spend efficiently. So and this contributes to growth, to our economic growth. So the faster we spend it, the faster government spends the amounts, it will contribute to our economy. The faster our economy will grow. So just submit to us the report that you mentioned, and we'll probably take a look at this again during the DBCC hearing. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Senator Gatchalian. Any other member of the team would like to present on the economic outlook of the Philippines? If not, anyway, we'll have another one for the DTI. If not, we'd like to thank you, and we'll take up the next topic on the agenda, which is the law that our distinguished colleague here, Senator Gatchalian and Senator Aimee, are both authors of, together with Senator JV. And this is the creation of the Department of Economic Planning and Development, defining its powers and functions, appropriating funds, therefore, and other purposes. of course, um, we'd like to recognize the secretary to make a brief presentation on, for the record, since I'm new, I was not the chairman, I'm just the new chairman of this committee. Well, I will be asked these questions on the floor. Is it necessary? Is it going to be expensive and costly for us? Et cetera, et cetera. So maybe you could come up with a preliminary statement, and if you have a presentation, you can proceed, Your Honor.
I will thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Let me read a brief statement on the matter. So, colleagues in government, good morning, good afternoon. I thank the Senate for allowing us to discuss the importance of passing this important bill, the Economy, Planning and Development Bill. The proposed legislative measure strengthens and streamlines the powers and functions of the Economic and Planning Agency of Government, mandated by the Constitution to implement continuing and coordinated policies for national development. First, please allow me to provide some context. Despite encountering several domestic and global headwinds since emerging from the pandemic, the Philippines is one of the Asia's best performing economies. Still, amid a generally favorable outlook, the country continues to face the challenges of sustaining rapid and inclusive growth, managing inflation, eradicating poverty, and addressing various socioeconomic inequalities. Economic history suggests that economic and social development results from deliberate, concerted government actions. Saying differently, we only produce desired results when government actions are consistent and policies are coherent. The National Economic and Development Authority, or NEDA, Secretariat, by Executive Order EO number 2230, series of 1987, is primarily tasked to serve as the research and technical arm of the NEDA board, which the President chairs. Over the years, the public has expected the agency to play a more significant role in shaping the nation's economic and social development amid complex challenges. To effectively and efficiently perform this expanding mandate, NEDA needs to be reorganized into the Department of Economy, Planning and Development, or DepDev, to act as the primary agency of the executive branch for policy, planning, coordinating, and monitoring socioeconomic matters. In 2015, during my first term at NEDA, we initiated the formulation of Ambition Natin 2040, the country's long-term collective vision of a matatag, maginhawa at panatag na buhay for all Filipinos. Although the creation of a long-term vision is not part of NEDA's mandate under EO number 230, we recognize then that an articulated and shared vision grounded on data and information from consultations with Filipinos from various sectors is instrumental in rallying our countrymen to contribute to nation building and achieving our overall goals. Thus, we saw the need to institutionalize the formulation of this long-term vision. Medium and long-term development roadmaps must transcend political cycles, and the accompanying policy initiatives, legislative priorities, government's programs, and projects must be sustained and implemented consistently over decades, not just a few years. Stakeholder consultation fosters inclusivity and sound participatory governance as it promotes shared ownership and accountability. To ensure the vision remains relevant, it must undergo a periodic review, considering our country's or our countrymen's changing aspirations and preferences. NEDA must have a clear mandate to lead in this regular visioning and long-term planning exercise with the participation of government instrumentalities and relevant stakeholders. Further, for the past 4 decades, NEDA has led the formulation of the Philippine Development Plan. However, proper planning can only go so far if we do not seamlessly link it with other equally essential steps in the cycle. These steps include budgeting, implementation, monitoring, and evaluation, which feed back into the planning exercise. NEDA performs a catalytic role in each step. It facilitates agency coordination by aligning agency objectives, harmonizing policy instruments and implementation timelines, and resolving roadblocks toward timely policy or project assessment and execution. The reorganization of NEDA into the Department of Economy, Planning and Development would strengthen NEDA's mandate and give the agency equal footing with other executive departments, thereby reinforcing such linkages. The reorganization will help ensure that well-crafted plans do not remain just that we adequately monitor the policies and projects the government approves to check on their progress, and that we rigorously evaluate to examine their effectiveness in realizing intended outcomes. NEDA, Mr. Chair, sits in over 100 interagency bodies and councils by virtue of several laws and issuances, underscoring its vital and pivotal role in shaping the nation's economic and social development. It helps inform high-level policy decisions and legislative deliberations, covering nearly all aspects of the nation's economic life. NEDA evaluates and ensures that the government will spend scarce public resources on high-impact initiatives. At the same time, it coordinates government actions toward the execution and realization of policies and projects. It ensures inclusivity by helping steer and push for regional programs and projects aligned with the President's socioeconomic agenda. In a fast-changing and increasingly complex world, the institutions playing a role in our country's economic governance must evolve to meet the needs of the times. We hope that Congress will recognize that the reorganization of NEDA into DepDev will help our institution fulfill its mandate to serve the country and bring us closer toward the matatag, maginhawa at panatag na buhay that we all aspire for. Thank you and good morning. Good afternoon to you again to all. Mr. Chair, we have a few slides that we can show
Proceed, Your Honor.
to see how our the new department differs from what it is today and the requirements that the new law will entail.
Thank you, Sec. Um, yes. Hello po. So good noon, everyone. This will be very quick. As Secretary Walisacan has already mentioned, this measure is quite important because it seeks to adopt and promote a culture of comprehensive, coherent, and coordinated policy-making, planning, and investment programming, evaluation, and monitoring to be led now by the Department of Economy, Planning, and Development. So through the reorganization of the NEDA as a department and by strengthening, enhancing, and streamlining its functions, the government will be better equipped to achieve the objectives and goals of the national economy as provided under Article 13, Section 1 of the 1987 Constitution. Let me skip to the gaps and challenges that the bill seeks to address. I think that's slide number 9. So the gaps and challenges that the bill seeks to address are these 6. I will go to the first one, which is inconsistency of public policies. Policies issued and implemented by various government actors at the national and subnational level should be consistent with the country's medium-term development agenda set by the President and geared towards the long-term vision. Reorganizing the NEDA into the DepDev would give it a stronger mandate and better capacity to oversee public policy, ensure consistency, and recommend alternatives in cases where policies run counter to the development agenda. Second is the alignment between national and regional plans and policies. So development planning and public policy making are skills that need to be developed throughout the bureaucracy to ensure that plans and policies are sound and coherent. The bill will now mandate DepDev to ensure alignment and coherence of national, subnational, sectoral, and spatial policies, plans, programs, and projects. The bill also mandates DepDev to implement a capacity building program on development planning for national, regional, and local planners, and it also institutionalizes and strengthens the mandate of the regional development councils established pursuant to Executive Order 325 series of 1996. Next slide. Third is the limited capacity of national and regional agencies and LGUs on planning and policy making. So, DepDev will be empowered to issue a planning call that will direct the government's planning cycle by prescribing standards, guidelines, and compliance and accountability mechanisms. And it will also, as I said, train not just planners, but national and regional agencies and local government units as a whole on development planning and policy making. At present, capacity building activities of the NEDA are done on an as-requested basis. Legislating this function will support NEDA's capacity building efforts and serve as basis to request for adequate resources for these activities. Fourth is the weak linkage between planning, investment programming, budgeting, M&E, and feedback to planning. Reorganizing the NEDA Secretariat into the DepDev will give the agency the power not just to formulate national and subnational development plans, but also to ensure that the annual and multi-year budget appropriations for programs and projects are aligned with the long-term development framework and national and subnational development plans. DepDev will likewise conduct and oversee evaluation of the impacts and outcomes of priority programs and projects and ensure that the results of which will inform development plans and programs in a timely manner. So just for the information of everyone, the NEDA Secretariat actually has no mandate to issue a planning call to commence formulation and updating of the PDP. The NEDA Secretariat has to wait for the directive of the President through an executive issuance for agencies to adopt the PDP. An institutionalized planning call will address issues on weak alignment with the budgeting process, particularly in terms of timelines and guidelines. Next slide. On the lack of continuity of plans and programs, the bill will institutionalize DepDev's formulation of the long-term vision and the long-term development framework, which is also not found in the EO 230, which is the Charter of NEDA. So the long-term vision will embody the Filipino citizens' aspirations and goals for the country's development, while the long-term development framework will be a high-level, broad strategy spanning 25 years that will guide the nation and the government's actions towards sustainable development and attainment of the vision. So institutionalizing this long-term vision and the long-term development framework will ensure that development plans transcend short-term thinking and political fluctuations. Next slide. On the need to anticipate and respond to future trends, the bill will mandate DepDev to undertake scenario planning and futures thinking exercises to anticipate future needs or discontinuities and recommend responsive measures to the President and the Congress. Next slide. So now we go to the salient provisions and the key changes proposed in the bill. Next slide. So the NEDA board will be reorganized or renamed into the Economy and Development Council, while the NEDA Secretariat will be the Department of Economy, Planning, and Development. As per Executive Order 230, NEDA is composed of two separate distinct entities, the NEDA board and the NEDA Secretariat. Next slide. So the Economy and Development Council listed here will have new members, which includes the secretaries of DOLE and DepEd, the Chief Minister of BARM, as well as the secretaries of DOH and DILG. The bill will also provide that the President may revise membership of the Council whenever the same is necessary for the effective performance of the Council's functions. Next slide. The ED Council committees are largely the same. We are just including the Economic Development Committee. And the Regional Development Committee, I think in the version of Senator Ejercito was taken out, but we propose to retain that in an amendment. To address issues regarding infrequency of meetings of the NEDA board and its committee, the bill proposes to mandate the council and its committees to meet regularly on a quarterly basis or as frequently as necessary. Next slide. With respect to the regional development councils that is provided under Executive Order 325, we propose to already include that in the bill and further strengthening it with a new list of powers and functions. Next slide. So these are the expanded list of the functions of the RDCs. Next slide. With respect to I think that's already finished. Can we go to the next one? For the DepDev powers and functions, so under EO 230, the NEDA Secretariat only acts as a technical arm that supports the NEDA board. So now, with all the functions that have been given to NEDA over the years, we are now institutionalizing already the powers and functions of NEDA in a listing here in the bill. So for under the policy and planning function, we have here a list of the functions that are already being undertaken by the policy and planning. We also propose an amendment to include the power to ensure that master plans are coordinated, synergistic, responsive to the emerging issues, and consistent with the priority development strategies. Next slide. Under the policy and planning function as well, it will now institutionalize the formulation of a long-term vision and the formulation of national and subnational development plans. We also propose to reword the function on planning and budgeting linkage to mandate the agency and DBM to work together to ensure that the annual and multi-year appropriations for programs and projects are aligned with the long-term development framework and national and subnational development plans towards optimal use of financial resources. Next slide. The investment programming function is largely the same as currently being undertaken by NEDA. With respect to the monitoring and evaluation function, we propose to use the term evaluate for determining the impacts and outcomes of priority programs and projects, as well as the inclusion of the power to formulate a medium-term national evaluation agenda and oversee the government's conduct of evaluation studies consistent with the agenda. Next slide. The bill also gives the agency the power to implement the capacity building program and to not just include planning, but also development plus policy, and not just for planners, but for national and regional government agencies, as well as the LGUs as a whole. The bill likewise mandates the agency to undertake scenario planning exercises to anticipate future trends and discontinuities, as I mentioned before. And it also seeks to institutionalize by law the formulation and adoption of the Philippine Development Plan, the Regional Development Plan, Public Investment Program, Regional Investment Program, Philippine Development Report, and the Regional Development Reports. And we're also proposing to include another report, which is the National Evaluation Report. Next slide. So this is, I think, the last slide. For the regional offices of DepDev, it only expands the function of the regional offices to mirror the functions of the department at the national level, such as alignment and integration of plans, evaluation of proposed policies and plans, and monitoring and evaluation. So that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So there's two sides to this bill. The one, of course, is the executive department's function. That's the president, the council. And then, of course, the day-to-day, the secretariat. So itong two portions of the bill. Of course, there's a lot of committees and a lot of yung mga pinakita nyo, mga plans and committees that we're going to standardize. For example, DBCC, EDCOM, Infracom, ICC, SDC, TRMC, NLUC, and RDCOM. Yeah. So I have to study what we'll do, Secretary, is let's move towards a TWG already. Let's do a TWG to move this forward because we have very few weeks or months left. To be honest, after October, budget na yan. And we'll be busy with the budget the whole November, December. So, baka pwede kong isingit-singit yan habang there's a lull in the budget. But that's going to be I foresee that a lot of my colleagues will probably debate me on this, particularly the minority, on this, the functions and the institutionalization of these committees under this law. So you will ask me, I'm sure, what is the function of each and every committee? So we have to be briefed properly, maybe during the TWG. So any questions, Your Honor? Yeah, please.
Just quick question, and also maybe it's good to emphasize. I remember when we were formulating this bill, one of the objectives is to improve the linkage between budgeting and planning. Because, Mr. Chairman, as we all know, NEDA will present the plans, the RDC will present the plans. All the plans are really nice and grandeur, but without budget, those plans are just pieces of paper. No? So one of the features that we included, at least in our proposal, is to improve that linkage so that when budgeting happens, these plans are taken into consideration and taken into account so that we are hitting what we are planning, no? Or else parang it's just keep on going around, eh, no? So one of the most that's why in I was going through the presentation and I saw the planning budgeting linkage is maintained in the proposal. I would like to ask Secretary or maybe use a Crystal to explain to the committee this feature, no? Because I remember this feature is one of the most compelling feature on why we push with this bill, no? And how this feature can improve the achievement of what our planners are planning or putting into action, no? Another concept, Secretary, I'll open this again also, is the targets. No, I remember during the hearing also that NEDA has no, the RDCs, NEDA, they come up with different plans, but accountability to those plans and as well as measuring those plans whether we are hitting them or not. No, that's also another feature that we included in the bill mandating different agencies to participate, even LGUs, in crafting of medium-term plans and other plans. But aside from that, to measure whether we are hitting those plans or not. Again, the plans are just pieces of paper if we don't measure and hit them. Eh. And we have to be disciplined. We have to be disciplined enough to measure ourselves, to put money on those targets, and to reevaluate whether we need to put more money to hit the plans or scrap the plans altogether or recalibrate it. No, so there is a institutional process built into the law so that we know that we are moving forward, no, with different targets. No? So two things, no, the linkage and also accountability. Um,
Thank you, Senwin. Yeah, I think you described properly the issues and the problems. These two key problems that we're trying to address in the bill. Um, uh, Rightly so, this problem of linking the regions. Let's start with the regions. Linking the regional priorities, development priorities, to the national. I think that we do. We have institutionalized that within NEDA. But linking the national plans to the budget is a very challenging issue. And while over the years, DBM and NEDA have been cooperating, coordinating their actions in relation to getting that matching of POPs that are in the plans and POPs that are budgeted. The arrangements have been quite ad hoc, and depending on the secretary who sits there and who sits at NEDA, it may be sustained or not. So because it's not institutional, it's not put in the respective mandates. No? So I think that's what we are trying to address in this so that there is to be sure also the DBCC is a committee of the NEDA board and also as a committee under the proposed NEDA or the council is chaired by the DBM secretary. All right, and so it's essentially DBM driving the process. There's support. We are members of the of the DBCC. There are I said actually three there: DBM, NEDA, DOF, and with the BSP as a resource person. No? So essentially that three of us, we need to also strengthen that process so that we can tighten the at least the macro side, but the nuts and bolts here are on the projects, programs that are in the NEP or in the GAA. That's what we really would want to see, that the planning and budgeting is not something that is just at the whims and decisions of the secretaries sitting there, but that is what the law requires them to do. So that's what we want. The other one is, Mr. Chair, is the going from the planning to budgeting and then the implementation, and then further down the evaluation. That evaluation is also one that we are trying to strengthen, because we really don't have a systematic process of seeing whether that the projects that are being supported, the programs that are being funded are working or not, or achieving their objectives or not. And what happens is, we keep funding as long as they are already in the line item of in the GAA, we keep putting money in there without any evaluation whether they are achieving their objectives or not. That's a major feature that we want to do here, so that we can ensure that the projects, the monies that we are supporting, projects that people's money are supporting, are actually achieving their objectives. If they're not achieving their objectives, then there is scrap, or you improve on the implementation process of that. So yung mga ganon, that I think that those two are major features of these reforms.
Thank you, Secretary, kasi you guys, the two gentlemen brought up a good point. When my father was governor for quite a long time, he headed the RDC few years, and his frustrations, that's why hindi siya natuloy, ayaw niya na maging RDC kasi pag-upo niya, syempre maraming plano. He'll ask all the provinces of the region to submit their priority development programs. And then, of course, lumalabas sila ng report on the priority, whether it's a bridge or whether it's a road network, whether it's a master plan for development. Hindi na pick up all recommendatory. It's all recommendatory ng DBM, no? Wala si Secretary Mina dito, but it becomes recommendatory. And for example, dun sa amin sa Region 10, many years, Minda together with RDC really pushed for the bridge. Yung bridge natin na yun, malapit na matapos. Itong Pangil Bay Bridge. Yes, connecting Llano del Norte and Misamis Occidental. That will really bring down the travel time significantly by 2-3 hours. Kasi kung mag-roro, the only way to do it, to reach Osamis City, mag-roro ka talaga, and napakatagal, nakataklag yan, depending on weather pa, or else you have to travel a very long route to get towards Tangub. Yes, Tangub, that area. So this Pangil Bay Bridge was a recommendation of almost, I think, 2 decades. 1998 pa kasi ako sa congressman, so naalala ko, yun yung pinag-uusapan palagi ng mga taga doon. Yung tulay. Imagine if it was part already of the program and planning. Kung ito talagang finocus ng RDC to recommend to the national government, to the DPWH, to the DBM, di matagal na sanang na tayo yan. I think in many instances, no. So I totally agree that we should have a bill or a law such as this, which will institutionalize it. And sayang yung mga inputs ng local governments. Dating mayor itong kasama ko. I'm sure you were once upon a time also part of RDC for NCR. and you probably had come up with a very good idea on flood control, but I don't think it was probably approved. Talo ng congressman, natalo sa congressman. So, I think mahalaga na ma-institutionalize natin to. And the processes that will make this actually finally happen. Napakasayang ng inputs ng RDC Kung di talaga natatanggap dun sa NEP. Paglabas ng NEP, walang budget. Recommendatory lang talaga. Whoever's malakas yan, may push. Sec, you want to comment?
Yes, I just wanted to add, Mr. Chair, that no less than our president noted this when he asked me to go back to NEDA. There's one concern, one request, and that's to strengthen NEDA, because when he was governor, he said, I did not see NEDA at all in many of the concerns of the region. So he wants to strengthen regional and the LGU as part of the entire process. And the problem is it's not in the current mandate of NEDA, or at least institutionally. It has a services secretariat of the RDC, of the council of the region. But as you know, the region is not a government. It's the governments of the provinces, of the cities and the towns, but there NEDA does not have any presence. So you need to strengthen that links between, especially now that LGUs are now much more, well, it's stronger in the sense of the financial mandate or responsibilities. The more that they need that kind of assistance from the planning to resource mobilization, they need an institution like NEDA to bridge that kind of development issue.
I think if you collate all the RDC proposals, I'm sure malaking hiningi na budget yan, but if you collate all the RDC proposals from Apari down to the BARM to Sulu or Tawi-Tawi, and we implement their recommendations for infrastructure development, I think it will probably solve a lot of our infrastructure backlog. Maganda din. I've never sat sa RDC because I've always been a legislator all my life, pero seeing their inputs and outputs, maganda naman. For example, I had just recently come back from Siargao. I was so happy to see, and I'd like to put this on record, so many foreign tourists in Siargao. Ang dami. Spaniards, Europeans, Americans. There was a Russian also family that was when I was having dinner from all over the world. Ang dami. Pero alam mo yung problema namin doon? Brownout, kuryente. Diyos ko po. I have to sleep, in my resort. Totoo to, for the first 2 nights, I would sleep with the control of the aircon. Kasi magba-brownout sa gabi, mag-switch off yung aircon. Pag bukas ng generator, hindi na nabubukas yung aircon. So, bubuksan mo. Tuk! Mga 4 times a night, nangyayari yun. And then they said it's already a daily occurrence in Siargao because the development is so large, the tourism is so plentiful. Now, hindi kina-catch up ng local cooperative yung kanilang power requirements. Kaya also of course the investors are complaining, the businessmen are complaining, nasisira lahat ng nila, cooling system, refrigerator, etc. But I'm sure in the Regional Development Council that is being discussed. For sure yan. Including the airport is so small, they're getting 4 flights a day now. The airport is slightly bigger than this room. Boss, for 4 flights a day. So yung mga tao talaga nakatayo, yung mga foreigners. So parang, I'm sure the Regional Development Council, if you can get in touch with your NEDA head for Caraga, I'm sure they discuss these things. And for me lang, this is the crown jewel. Siguro how difficult is it, Secretary? Maybe you can make this speech to Secretary Frasco and the President when you see them. I remember in the last administration did a coordinating body for tourism. So sinama nila DOTR, Tourism, DPWH, and I forget the other agency. Pero 4 yan na agencies. Under the 4 agencies, they were looking talaga, that's how they developed Boracay to what it is now. ilan lang naman yung crown jewels natin sa tourism, di ba? We have Boracay, we have Bohol, we have Palawan. In Palawan, you have El Nido, you have Coron, and then you have Siargao. Siargao actually just came out in the news today as one of the top island destinations in the world. I'm so happy, but what I saw myself 2 days ago or yesterday, or was it Sunday? Sunday was medyo appalling. Kasi we are voted as that in spite of there is the limitations of our infrastructure. So that's where the RDC really comes in. That's where the RDC, when they meet the local government units, will say, kulang yung kuryente namin dito, hindi kami maka-expand ng ganito. Sama ng airport natin, yung seaport, medyo palpak. So that is where the RDC comes in talaga. And that's why we have to strengthen the RDC. So if you have a chance, Secretary, in the next board meeting, sabi mo naman na we have to fix also Siargao and this, the crown jewels. That's less than our hands. Siguro less than 7 crown jewels of the Philippines na sana bantayan, lagyan ng magandang airport, maglagyan natin ng magandang kuryente, power source, of course, infrastructure, just like what we did with Boracay, I think, and hospitals as well. Opo, hospitals. So, yun lamang. Anyway, sorry, I went off tangent, but I just wanted to share with you my experience over the weekend. So let's moving forward. I want to move this quickly. Let's have a TWG. I move that we have a TWG so that we can consolidate already the bills of Senator Gatchalian. I like some of the inputs of Senator Gatchalian, together with Senator Marcos and Senator JV. May we ask the officers of the 3 authors to join you in the TWG, the creation of the TWG. Of course, we'll ask all the stakeholders to be part of the TWG. Question, DBM. Okay, this always arises in the creation of a new agency. Baka naman susulatan nyo yung mga senador at sasabihin nyo na ayaw nyo nito. So we need to know now before all of them will line up to interpolate me because of a letter circular from the DBM. Ano pong position nila dito sa Department of DepEv? DepEv. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The DBM strongly supports the bill.
On record ka, on record. Si Mina, okay si Mina. Sec Mina, okay.
Sec Mina and
Attorney, okay ka, attorney.
our legal and OPCCB on organizational structure. But the point is, we cannot discount the contribution of NEDA to national progress, economic development, and poverty reduction. Details of the organizational structure and probable incentives for separation benefits are of course assumed to undergo normal process of budgeting and management.
To be equal to at parity with other government agencies and departments. So maybe you can also assign USEC your personnel for the DWG para mabantayan nyo na. Alam mo, I'll tell you what, my frustration as Senate President, and the good gentleman here knows this, ilang beses namin naipasa sa committee level, alam ni Secretary to because we always complain about it whenever we have LEDAC. Ang dami natin naipasa na batas na ratified na, tapos pinapabalik sa amin. Case in point, yung kay Senator Tulfo, yung seafarers, this is the first time in my 20 plus years of legislator that we constituted 3 BICAMs for that measure. The first BICAM, we ratified, sabi ng Malacanang, may problema, balik sa BICAM. Recall yung BICAM ulit, second BICAM. Pinadala na, hindi pa rin, meron pa ng problema dun sa bond or whatever. Balik na naman on a third. That's why we have to get our acts right in the committee level and the TWG. Kasi mahirap in the middle of sa end game na pipirma na sana ni Presidente, sasabihin ng Malacanang ibibito nila yan kung di namin i-recall at gagawin ulit. So, we want to make sure that everybody is well represented in this TWG, and please be the bearer of either the good news or the bad news. In other words, make sure that you are in the position to make the amendments and you're in the position to make whether to approve it or disapprove it on your level. Kasi pagdating na naman sa Malacanang, i-review nila, may secretary nagsasabi, hindi, foul yan, hindi namin gusto yan. Mabibito ni Presidente. So we want to make it right this time. Secretary, ang dami natin nangyari dun sa yung ating Coco Levy Fund, yung ating anti-smuggling, yung sa Bulacan, ang daming na revert back to Congress para ayusin muli. So, let's do it right for this bill because I don't want na in the middle of the end of the day, sabihin ni Presidente, parang hindi ko pipirmahan to mix, babalik natin sa BICAM. So, I beg for your indulgence. Sana sumama po kayo sa TWG, especially the sectors that are concerned for this measure. I think on the plantilla positions, they already have their plantilla positions. We'll make it simple. It's just basically an adoption of their plantilla positions under the law. We'll follow the rules and regulations of the DBM on that, on the circulars on that. Yes, Senator
Mr.
Gatchalian.
Chairman, I just want to share with you and with the body my experience regarding this bill because I remember we wrote this during the 16th Congress when I was the chairman of this committee, the Economic Affairs Committee. And we actually sponsored this on the floor. Marami rin tayong technical working groups. I think si Yusek Rose was also there. We had a lot of technical working groups. We invited former 16th Congress. We invited former NEDA Director General to attend the technical working groups. I remember Secretary Canlas was there to attend. And it was a very fruitful technical working group. We managed to sponsor it on the floor, but you're right. We hit a roadblock at that time. And the pushback mainly came from the different departments themselves, no? Because in strengthening NEDA, the view of the other departments is we're weakening them. No, that is their view. Huh? So I remember we'll share it with Secretary Balisacan, the position papers of some of the departments. I won't name them now, no, but we'll share it with you. But the concept there is their view is by giving you more authority, we're actually taking authority from the other departments. That's their view, no? And because tama nga si chairman, that was given to a lot of the senators. So the senators had some concerns about that bill. So hindi natin napasa at that time. So it's good to hear that DBM loud and clear said that they are supporting this bill. I hope that will be carried all the way to the signing of this bill if ever we pass it because talagang nangyayari ho yan. No? Whenever, even though we pass this bill here, when it reaches Malacanang, some secretary will say, this is not in line with their mandate, then we have a problem. No? So I would suggest to review all the documents when we crafted this bill. This is 16th Congress. I think when Senator Aimee was also the chairperson, there were also comments. So let's review all of those. And then let's correct it, no? So that hindi tayo magkakaproblema at the end of hearing this bill. No?
Yeah, kasi for the benefit of my colleague and the body, as early as 13th Congress pa pala ito na file under Senator Mar Rojas. And then for whatever reason, hindi nailusot. And then the 14th Congress under Senator Richard Gordon, hindi na nakalusot. And then on the 17th Congress, it was revived under your 16th Congress ka ba? 16th Congress. And then the 17th Congress, hindi na nakalusot. Drilon, there was an amendment of Senator Drilon focused on the deletion of the provision pertaining to NEDA as the approving authority in national development policies and plans. And I think that was unacceptable at the time. So hindi naman nakalusot. And then the NEDA bill was refiled in the 18th Congress under Senator Aimee Marcos. I guess that also became a problem with the other agencies complaining. So today, under the 19th Congress, we have it here. I hope this time makalusot na. Kailangan natin ng labatiba para lusot talaga. So, well, yeah, I think I still have a bit of political capital that I can ask my colleagues to support this measure, no? Siguro naman. Yes.
Chairman, I think on our part, there's no problem. It's really among the secretaries who will have issues. Because it's a good bill. No? We're strengthening NEDA. We're giving it more authority. We're institutionalizing a lot of its programs, especially the planning. But again, no, to some secretaries, they might think that they're taking away some authority from them. No, at least that's the tone of the position papers that we receive. In fact, I think that was also the tone during the time of Senator Amy Marcos. No? So let's just put that on the table and be mindful of that. I don't think we'll have problems with the senators unless those position papers are once again cascaded to the others. No, so
Kasi baka yan ang tanong ni Minority Leader.
Yes. If I may, I will ensure that we talk with our colleagues. We are collegial bodies, so we have very good relationships with our, particularly our economic managers. That if there is anyone among our economic managers who will oppose, then I will not push for the NEDA bill, because it's not going to work anyway if there's opposition. Because what we want to establish here is a more harmonized process, so that the agencies can do, each of us can do our work better. That's the whole objective. So if it does not
I think it's
achieve that
about time.
objective, then it
Yes, I think
there's
it's
no
about
point.
time that you graduate from planning office to an actual department. And we've always treated you as a department anyways. We always treated you as a department. We've always treated NEDA as well as the head of NEDA as a secretary. And you go through the CA process. Dumaan po kayo CA process, di ba? Yes, I remember I was the presiding officer. So, kulang na lang institutionalize it as a department. So, with that said, you'll have my full support as chairman. We will come up with the committee report as soon as possible. Ang daming hearings na ito, ang daming ng TWG. So, I think we have the best possible outcome. After that, we'll have one meeting where I immerse myself with all of you on possible questions by my colleagues on the floor. And we will schedule the committee reports sponsorship as soon as possible. We have to move quickly. That's why ayoko na mag-second hearing. Magsa-second hearing na lang tayo sa economic outlook and investment opportunities. So with that, just last question, Your Honor. I have, my committee, when I sat, is flooded with requests for creation of economic zones all over the country. I without fear or favor, can you just put on the record, and we've discussed this already as senators here. Sabi namin, alam namin, galing di kaming House. We were both congressmen. Sa House, they pay special attention to the request of the House for local bills. Considered local bill yan. Pagdating sa Senado, ibang usapan na yan. Kasi we weigh heavily on the recommendations of our colleagues in the executive. If the executive says, wag yan, sir, kasi wala tayong budget, it's contrary to our EOs and policies. So that's where we put a stop on it, we put a break. And we just discussed it with the new SP, Senator Escudero, that we all agreed in principle in the lounge during the first, after the sauna, we had the first caucus, that local bills also have to have the explicit and tacit approval of the departments concerned. For example, creation of engineering districts. So sa dami ng congressman, gusto na lahat ng congressman may sarili silang engineering district para may sarili silang district engineer. And for whatever, we can all surmise. But ang punto dyan is, nung kinausap naman namin ng DPWH, wala naman doon silang tao. And the DBM will not also give them the additional staffing to put 100 more district offices, engineering offices. So we had to put a stop. So ang policy namin dyan is, if the DPWH says go on this district engineer and new engineering districts, okay kami. Pag sinabi na it is not necessary and it is still within the ambit of what is the existing setup there, then we do not pass it. So may usapan na kami ganyan. That goes true for the holidays as well. I know pet peeve din ng NEDA yung holidays kasi may mga probinsya na halos isang buwan na yung holidays kasi yung mga araw, mga anniversary, religious, lahat-lahat, local holidays. Pag sinasama-sama mo yan, talagang napaka-raming holidays, which is also not to the benefit of the business owner, because the business owner, of which I also happen to be one, we have to pay double. It's a double pay for our workers. It's difficult economically for the business owners and even the small and micro entrepreneurs. They have to pay double the rates. So may usapan na din kami. Yung usapan namin, Secretary, is 1 holiday per province ang papayagan namin. Kung may holiday na, hindi na pwede. 1 holiday per province. Yun lang. So, pero most provinces have already, in the previews, already have holidays. So kung meron na, hindi na namin i-approve yan. But we will approve a working holiday. So lahat yan, approved working holiday. Pero yung non-working holiday, because I believe the national holidays, 3 weeks na. I think 22 days na yata yung holidays natin, no? All in all. About 22. So almost a month of the whole year we have holidays in this country, in the national level. So we're very careful also giving it on the local level. So in terms of economic zone, sabihin nyo na yun. If you frown upon it, let us know. Because anyway, if you want an economic zone, the president can through his power, through PEZA, create an economic zone. What is your guidance, Secretary, since you are my counterpart in the executive on the creation of, marami dito, may Mindoro, Marinduque, Eastern Visayas, Antique, Cebu, 19 economic zones. Amendments to existing economic zones, boss. Anong guide mo sa akin as your chair?
Our position has always been that that it follows the principle that we must deploy our scarce resources in where they can get the most benefits. And for that, to ensure that that is achieved, we require or we must present a feasibility study. That if the feasibility study shows that it is a very potentially beneficial project for the local economy or for the national economy, because a properly done feasibility study already takes into account the opportunity cost, no? That this gives you better outcomes than otherwise would be the case. So if that passes the test, then it should be allowed to go. That's our only constant refrain whenever we receive requests for comments from Congress, so that we ask for the conduct of a feasibility study to ensure that people's money are not wasted.
Maybe I'll you have a very diplomatic answer, Your Honor. Very diplomatic answer. Maybe I'll go to the Department of Finance kasi obviously creation of 19 economic zones will seriously deteriorate your fiscal fiscal space. And so can you give us a frank and honest to goodness answer para ako nang bahala, no? Ako nang bahala. Pero galing sa ahensya mismo. Ano ang
Yes,
masasabi niyo?
actually, Mr. Chair, when the issue of economic zones was just raised a few minutes ago, that was actually the concern that me and my team already immediately discussed about the fiscal implications. So yeah, it could erode some of our expected revenues. And we just would like to note that we would want to conserve as much as possible on our revenues right now, especially when our consideration is not to introduce any new tax measures over and above what we already have.
To mention, you're trying to rationalize all these economic zones and create more. So this will be individual charters. Napakahirap na naman i-monitor itong individual charters na to na gagawin. So at least we have guidance from the DOF. Yung DOF talaga ang number one concern yan eh. May number one concern yan. So thank you for that information. So anyone else want to contribute to the discussions? If not, my dear colleague, okay na? Yeah. If not, we move to the TWG, come up with the committee report as soon as possible, and then I'll sponsor it as soon as I can as well, Secretary. So, maraming salamat sa inyong participation, and I shall see you once again very soon. We'll be discussing budget as well. I won't be handling. I for the first time I'm going to be vice chairman for the budget, but I'll be handling DOST. Ano yung sa'yo, boss? DOE. DOE. DOST ako. So with that, I suspend the hearing because we still have to wait for the BOI to present their investment outlook for the country. So with that, we suspend the hearing. We'd like to thank all the stakeholders that came, especially NEDA in full force with all your undersecretaries. Of course, the DBM that's here, regards to SECMINA, to the DOF, please give my regards to our dear colleague who was former NEDA secretary also, Ralph Recto, sa DTI, BSP, and sino isa? BOI nandito din. Sa ating lahat, magandang umaga po. This hearing is hereby suspended. Maraming salamat.